Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Asheville City Council meeting for February 12th, 2013. I just ask that you take a moment to ensure that your phones are either on vibrate, silent, or off to ensure it will not disrupt the meeting. I do want to apologize for starting late, but the majority of the council went and celebrated with the Asheville Cougars band at UNC Asheville. The chancellor held a nice reception for them, and we'll probably hear about it a little bit later. And then others of us had other issues that we had to take care of, like I had to make a presentation before our our county commissioners, which was nice. They have a really nice room over there. I'm just saying, it's really nice over there.
Yeah, just saying.
I'm just saying that renovation, I think our drapes could use a little updating, but that's neither here nor there. Tonight, since we've checked our phones and everything's not going to disrupt the meeting, let's start with our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's invocation will be given by Vice Mayor Manheimer.
Thank you, Mayor. So now what's become a tradition, when it's my turn for invocation, I talk to my dad, Ron Manheimer, who writes my invocation based usually on what we have coming up on our agenda for the evening. And we have an interesting proclamation tonight, that being Darwin Day. So that was couldn't resist that. And it's also Abraham Lincoln's birthday. Today, 205 years ago, both Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln were born, which I did not know. So that the invocation will reflect that coincidence. Tonight, let us invoke the spirits of Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln, born hours apart on this day 205 years ago, on either side of the Atlantic. The first to a prominent and affluent family in Shropshire, England, the other to the dirt-poor family of Thomas Lincoln, who dwelled in a humble log cabin in the woodlands of Kentucky. Sir Charles bequeathed to us the famous theory of evolution that asserted all species are linked and evolve from less to more complex organism through genetic mutation and environmental adaptation, recognizing that human beings, despite apparent diversity, were of one species. Darwin was also an avid abolitionist who took great interest in America's experiment with democracy. Lincoln, while not actually a vampire slayer, did engage in battle with those who sought to dissolve the fragile union of colonies that had turned into a collection of United States, divided by slavery into North and South. And Lincoln, sometimes called the Great Emancipator, fought against slavery and the dehumanizing of human beings as if some belonged to a different species. While Darwin saw the inevitable hand of an impersonal force of nature shaping societies, Lincoln saw the will of the people through acts of legislation shaping a better life for all. So from Darwin, we learn that we are part of the great chain of being, and from Lincoln, that the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Let us therefore strive to ensure that in all the ways we are interconnected, we act in such a way that what conjoins us becomes stronger and stronger. Happy birthday, Chuck and Abe.
All right, thank you very much. And Councilman Bothwell is going to proclaim February 12, 2013 as Darwin Day, and Jennifer Lovejoy will receive the proclamation.
I learned from Jennifer, actually through Jennifer, that this day is being celebrated in cities around the world. And in fact, there's an act in front of Congress, I don't know if it's passed yet, declaring today Darwin Day. So that's where this city proclamation came from. Whereas February 12th is the anniversary of the birth of Charles Darwin in 1809, and whereas Charles Darwin is recognized for the development of the theory of evolution by the mechanism of natural selection, and whereas Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection is recognized as the foundation of modern biology, which is an essential tool in understanding the natural world and the development of life on Earth, And whereas Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection has provided and continues to provide the basis for great advances in science, medicine, and philosophy, and whereas the anniversary of Darwin's birthday is an appropriate period on which to reflect and celebrate the importance of scientific advancement to all people, and now therefore I, Terry Bellamy, Mayor of the City of Asheville, do hereby proclaim February 12, 2013 as Darwin Day in the City of Asheville and encourage all citizens to recognize and celebrate the importance of Darwin's contributions to science. There you go, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
All right. Would you like to say a few words about it?
I would, thank
Okay.
you. Wow, this is amazing. What we do here matters. The world is watching, and I am so proud to be part of a city that is a role model to others. I am proud to live in an area that not only recognizes Darwin, but the importance of science as a whole. When the announcement of this proclamation was made, the response I received was overwhelming. And so I asked folks, what does Darwin Day mean to you? I wanted you all to hear what the people collectively felt about Darwin Day. And so I would like to read just a few comments that were made. On this day, we remember not only Abraham Lincoln, who liberated human beings from physical bondage, but Charles Darwin, who liberated the human mind with a new scientific understanding of our origin and nature. To know that people all over the world are celebrating Darwin today tells me that in our modern world, the importance of science and knowledge are recognized and appreciated, and that's the sort of world I am gratified to be living in. Someone else wrote, it means that science and exploration and critical thinking are a priority and a necessity for the growth of our community. And if you'll allow me just one more. On Darwin Day, we celebrate a person for no other reason than his brilliance. This holiday reminds us all how much Darwin has changed science and how we as a society and as individuals are always on the verge of new and exciting discoveries. The human mind is marvelous, complex, and a beautiful thing, and Darwin Day reminds us all that we have the capacity for true greatness. There are so many here, I wish I had all day to read them to you. This is incredibly inspirational to me, and I hope that this proclamation and Darwin continues to inspire future generations. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you very much. And I would add that if you go and Google Charles Darwin today, you'll find a great picture of him on the web in a party hat.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to add one thing to the agenda that does not need council's approval or support. I had the opportunity to attend a U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting earlier this year in January, and I hadn't had the opportunity to I hadn't been at a council meeting since then to talk about some of the great things that happened. And only one I'm going to talk about, and one of us involves the chief, and I'm going to ask the chief to come down and meet me at the front. One of the things that Chief Anderson has done since he's been here is to help with getting prescription drugs that people are no longer using out of their medicine cabinets. And he, along with the partnership that exists with the Sheriff Department and some other nonprofits, have won an award. So I brought money. So our city has won second place in a competition looking at how to reduce prescription drug abuse, and City of Asheville came in second. So I'm presenting to the chief the fake check for $5,000 because the real check is probably going to the controller's office. But I wanted to say thank you so very much for your organization, your part of the organization's leadership in helping to keep our children safe. Most people don't know that that's the number one place young people are beginning to abuse, and that's in their own medicine cabinets. And so for individuals who no longer have a back pain or no longer have those issues, and you still have that prescription drug in your cabinet, get rid of it. They're asking not to dump it in the toilet, but throw it away in the trash can. But please get rid of it, because a lot of our kids, and if you have teens who visit your house and spend too much time in the bathroom, it may not be because of number two. And so we're asking that you become more aware and let people know that if you're no longer using that prescription drug, go ahead and get rid of it. Chief, you want to speak to it? this issue, or congratulations?
Just want to thank you and the Council of Mayors for this. We will have another medicine drop-off here real soon, so just pay attention to the news media on the date and time and location. But it's very important to all communities that we have these type of operations. So thank you and the rest of the City Council.
All right, Council, the next item of business tonight is our consent agenda. Any member of the community wishing to address council on any item on the printed consent agenda can do so at this time. Items A through G3. Shannon Tuck, you want to talk about the consent agenda? Okay. Thought you had a concern. Just kidding. All right, Council, no one's coming forward, and I do want to bring up item E, a resolution to support the 2013-2015 funding for Clean Management Trust Fund. This is an issue that's going to go before the state. As they're looking at their budgets, it's up for chopping. And why is that important? Is really, in the past, those funds have really helped clean up parts of our community, and a lot of funding has gone towards cleaning up our own river, French Broad River. And so it's important to continue to protect those funds because a lot of communities need those additional dollars to help clean up our communities and their communities as well. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Davis?
Mayor, I'd like to just speak about item B, please, the resolution authorizing city manager to enter into a contract with Brantley Construction Company, LLC, for Phase 3 renovations of U.S. Cellular Center. And I think the importance there is that we're getting toward the end of the renovations of the arena, and this is the start of the next phase of it. And of course, we're getting ready. We're on the eve of the second year of the Southern Conference men's and women's basketball tournament. I think it's notable that we have leveraged that event into doing tremendous renovations there, and it's a great opportunity for the community to come out and get involved, see some great basketball, see what's been done in the building, and we're getting ready to see these things completed, and it's just amazing to see what that does to the community in early March when things are slow in restaurants and things are needing a little boost. All of a sudden to have thousands of people come into our community, and there's great opportunities to volunteer and be part of that event. So
I agree. And I think that's March 8th through the 11th?
March 8th through the 11th, and again, you can get further information. We got a brand new website at the Civic Center, and that's very important. Chris is back here sticking his hand up, and that we are so pleased with that. We have not had a website that really was uniquely attached to the U.S. Cellular Center before, and it has its own being, and it tells all events and lots of information, so please visit that.
Another point, anyone who have children and who would like to come downtown on Saturday morning, March the 9th, we are going to have a parade of young people dribbling basketballs from the Vance Monument down up to the Civic Center, and I'm leading that effort. All jokes aside, don't laugh at the mayor dribbling the ball. I'm practicing. Oh, and so please come participate. The kids get a free basketball, a free T-shirt, and a free ticket to attend one of the games. So it's going to be a great opportunity for our kids.
One more quick mention on that, too. Mel Chin is a renowned artist throughout the world, and the Art Museum has had a Mel Chin display that went up I guess it was toward the end of the summer. If you've not seen it, there are basketballs arranged like clusters of grapes with the net forming leaves, and it's beautiful, beautiful work of art. And Mel Chin, who is really super artist, well thought of throughout the world, agreed to leave that display up there until we kicked off the Southern Conference with this dribble to the U.S. Cellular Center. So that's worth going just to see it. So it's a lot of great things happening.
Wonderful. Councilman Smith?
I think Councilman Hunt was going to...
Well, Madam Mayor, on item C, I had presented some questions to staff just to gain some clarification, and I think it took a little while for them to pull together, and Mr. Jackson suggested that staff address those questions here briefly. I don't think we need to pull this and consider it separately, but I would hope staff could respond.
Yes, if we could call up Miss Nikki Reed, our real estate manager, I think she can cover that in short order.
Welcome, Ms. Reed.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so I'm just bringing up a map here to show the areas that are considered for the land swap. And so when the city first approached the Bowcatcher Purchase Group with the idea to acquire some property for the development of the Bowcatcher Greenway, what we really understood that was important to them is a buffer between the city's intense land use there at the telecommunications tower and the property that they live. Basically, the Bowcatcher Purchase Group is a group of homeowners that reside in the Wind and the Oaks subdivision. So that understanding that interest really came down to offering up a land swap. So what we're offering is a portion of the city property that really represents the buffer between the telecommunication tower, the Wind and the Oaks subdivision, in exchange for the property that we need for the Bowcatcher Greenway. So all things considered, we look at this as a full and fair swap, considering the city's need for the property, as well as protecting and offering up that buffer to the telecommunications tower. And as far as the park is concerned, it is a larger parcel. It's about 7 acres. And any future park development that we can see, there we go, would likely be towards the south of this land swap area, kind of towards where you see Macaulay Drive is located. That's really where any future park development would occur, so that you can gain access to the vistas extending from that point. So are there any additional questions in regard to that?
If you don't mind, I did speak with Asheville Greenworks, who was very interested in helping the visioning for the park, and that they confirmed that they support the swap very much.
Great.
The zoning of the property that the city holds, I understand the development owner adjoining suggests that they want it only as a buffer, but what would the zoning of the property we would transfer to that developer allow the developer to do? And should we consider a different zoning class if that's a problem?
Yes, and what's interesting about this property is that the city's parcel is actually zoned RS2, as well as the property that Bowcatcher Purchase Group seeks to convey here. And so what normally, I'm not sure if I can speak to exactly what's permitted under an RS2 zoning classification, but it seems to be fairly a low density and low intense use.
Okay, I'm fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Smith.
Just wanted to, it's not about this, it's a different matter. See, Claudia Nix is here, and I'm just very grateful for the gift that's coming from the Blue Ridge Bicycle Club for the bicycle wayfinding signs. I don't know if Ken...
I didn't see it on there, but I did have a couple of comments.
Did you say you had a couple of comments?
Could I make a comment?
Sure.
She said she didn't see it on there. Gordon?
It's item G1.
It's G1 in the consent agenda.
Yeah, I didn't see it earlier when I looked at the agenda. But first of all, I'm Claudia Nix. You all know me. Claudia Nix with Liberty Bicycles. But today I'm here as a representative of the Blue Ridge Bike Club. I am the chair for the advocacy committee. And we are extremely happy to give the grant to the city to be able to put in the wayfinding signs for the bicyclist. We started a new program last year where we're giving away this money. And Barb Mee, I suggested that she apply for it, and she did. And we see it as a way to improve the bike friendliness of this community, to help people be able to ride their bikes to get from UNCA to downtown to West Asheville. This is our first step, and so we're really excited and hope to be able to continue doing more for you.
Thanks so much, Claudia.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. And Ken Putnam is back there, and he's got an example of what these signs look like. Ken, could you just show everybody what these things look like?
I'll show it to you all first.
They're good looking.
This is the full size of what the sign would be like out on the street. And there's 3 destinations that they've targeted. One of them is downtown, like this one says. The next one is UNCA, and the other one's West Asheville.
Thanks, Ken.
Any other comments? So I think I need an official motion, please.
Move to approve the consent agenda?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and properly second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. We're going to move to our presentations and reports. We're going to have a water resources update by Phil Keisler. And it's important to point out another thing will be added to the agenda. We're going to get a legislative agenda report update, and Jeff Richardson will make that presentation, and Phil will introduce Jeff. And council going forward, we will add under presentations and reports, legislative updates, and so that different staff people will come forward on those issues and give the Vice Mayor also an opportunity to talk about some things that's happening in Raleigh as well.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. It's my pleasure to be here today to provide you with your regular water resources update. This presentation will be brief, and it'll begin on the ongoing good faith negotiations between the City of Asheville and the Metropolitan Sewers District of Buncombe County, or MSD. The City Council received a proposal from MSD in late December relating to a possible water-sewer merger. As a good faith response, the City of Asheville replied with a letter proposing that staff from both organizations meet to identify possible areas of implementing different shared services. And so this concept of shared services stems from the recommendations from Raftellus Financial Consultants from their report to council of best practices of merged utility systems in North Carolina. We do anticipate that the MSD board will consider this proposal at their board meeting next Wednesday, February 20th at 2 p.m. The city's role in this meeting at this time is not known, whether or not we will be presenting or simply on hand to answer questions and so forth. So we will provide that update to council as soon as we are made aware of it. Applicable state legislation was a bullet as a placeholder in case any legislation was filed. No legislation was filed in the last 2 weeks, but wanted to let you know that. In addition, as Mayor Bellamy mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, Deputy City Manager Jeff Richardson will be providing a legislative summary from the North Carolina City and County Managers Association meeting in Durham this past week. Some upcoming dates to look forward to. Tomorrow, February 13th, the MSD Planning Committee will be meeting at 1 p.m. There is one agenda item on that meeting, and that is the Phase 2 report. They posted this to their website late last week, and as with the Phase 1 report, which looked at the possible consequences of merging the Asheville system with MSD, legal, governance, valuation, or compensation was not looked into. Components that were analyzed include staffing, infrastructure, operations, and potential cost and savings. While this report has been released, the board has not reviewed it publicly and has not adopted it as of yet. Also, which is not listed on here, the MSD board meeting, as I mentioned earlier, will be meeting the following Wednesday, the 20th at 2 p.m., and on that agenda should be the city's proposal that was sent to MSD. The last bullet that I'd like to go over on the overhead would be some recent information sharing and some resolutions that have been passed throughout the state of North Carolina. Try to zoom in. There was one request from the Asheville Citizen-Times relating to the list of municipalities that have adopted the resolutions that we'll go into at this time. The North Carolina League of Municipalities requested all of their members to adopt resolutions opposing legislation that provides for the forced taking of a municipal water system. The resolution template that they used was the one that the Asheville City Council adopted unanimously on December 11th. As of this afternoon, we are aware of 48 municipalities, including Asheville, that has considered this resolution. Of the 48 municipalities, 43 have adopted it. The town of Burgall and Maggie Valley are considering this resolution at their meeting tonight, and the town of Chapel Hill indicated that they will likely consider this resolution during a February meeting. As you know, Hendersonville and Montreat tabled the item, and that concludes my presentation at this time, and I go ahead and transfer to Jeff Richardson unless council has questions relating to this.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, members of council, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I will quickly highlight some information that Mr. Jackson, our city manager, and I ascertained last week. We had the opportunity last week to travel to Durham for the annual City County Managers Winter Conference. It's typically held each year in the February time frame, early February time frame, and we're there for about 2.5 days with other city and county managers from across the state. And as you might guess, there's a fair amount of interest and focus on the North Carolina legislature. As you know, it's early in the session, but I'd like to take an opportunity and just hit some highlights from what we learned last week. Mayor and Council, I know you have also been tracking this, and so you may have questions or you may have some information that you'd like to add. One of the things that was talked about last week in Durham was the General Assembly's interest as a high priority in tax reform. There is discussion and proposal to eliminate corporate and personal income tax that's being discussed in Raleigh currently. There was a lot of discussion last week about if tax reform moves forward, that we could see a sales tax base that might be expanded to services and the rate would increase, and discussion last week centered around 9 to 10%. Lots of discussion from both counties and cities about what the effect could be on North Carolina cities and towns, and at this point there's no analysis that's been done on the 100 counties across the state to talk about, as the restructuring takes place, how it affects individual communities. There is some likelihood that if this moves forward that local sales tax rates could be lowered. In addition to that, and Mr. Jackson and I wanted to flag this for council, a lot of discussion about the local privilege tax reform and a possible elimination of the local privilege tax across North Carolina for cities and towns. That's a part of the conversation currently. That's of concern to us because that's about $1.7 million out of our general fund. That's a revenue into our general fund on a year-to-year basis. Annexation amendment has been introduced. I know Mr. Ost is keeping a close eye on this. If passed, it puts a constitutional amendment before voters that would require 2/3 of the vote of the annexation area for all city-initiated annexations. It also constitutionally would eliminate all ETJs in North Carolina. I know Mayor and Council members are aware of that. In addition to that, there has been about a 6-year study and work in North Carolina to implement a combined motor vehicle registration and property tax collection system across North Carolina. There's about $80 million a year of uncollected motor vehicle tax in North Carolina. That new system was scheduled to go forward later this summer, and there's been a bill introduced to stop that implementation. We'll continue to monitor that as well. Operation of mopeds, that's a North Carolina League-sponsored bill that is gaining some interest and momentum down in Raleigh, and it's a bill that would require moped operators to have valid North Carolina license, insurance, and registration. We've had some discussion about that locally at the Public Safety Committee, and we've talked about that in the last year. One of the things that was of great interest that was talked about by the North Carolina League of Municipalities is back in December, a board of directors was formed, and it's called the North Carolina Communities and Business Alliance. And this alliance is formed as part of a collaborative effort to promote economic growth and development within North Carolina cities and towns. What's interesting about this is that this alliance is made up of community leaders, including former governors of North Carolina, municipal leaders, current and former members of the General Assembly, civic and business leaders across North Carolina. And what they're hoping to do is start a dialogue in Raleigh with our North Carolina General Assembly as sort of public policy ambassadors, and they have a strong interest in shaping the growth of cities and towns. These folks are focusing on public policy issues that affect the economic viability of cities and towns and the ongoing success of businesses and the quality of life that many of our citizens enjoy across the state. There's 5 areas of focus, and that's balanced growth, transportation infrastructure, water and wastewater infrastructure, education, and tax fairness. Mr. Jackson and I are going to continue to monitor this new alliance that was formed in December. They have their first official meeting this month. Former Governor Hunt is an alliance member. Lou Bissett from the city of Asheville has been appointed to this board. I spoke with Mr. Bissett today, and he said he would be interested in having an ongoing dialogue with our city as they get into these issues. We may be a good information source for Mr. Bissett on these issues, not only for Asheville, but for other cities across the state. That concludes my summary. Other things that they did talk about last week, they did talk about municipal utility control. The Asheville water system was discussed broadly with the league update. There's quite a bit of interest from managers across the state with that ongoing issue, and just a lot of support and concern from across the cities, as Mr. Kleisler has already indicated. Happy to answer any questions, and if there's none, Mayor, I'll be happy to turn it back over to you.
I'll say this, that Mr. Bissett is also interested in helping specifically with transportation and infrastructure on the I-26 connector. And so I do want to have us follow up with that discussion with him to see how he can assist us, because he said that's one of his priorities as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
All right, Council, we have some public hearings that we need to address. We have 3 of them, and the first one is a continuation of a conditional zoning for Harris Teeter, Phase 2, located at 17 and 23 Eloise Street, and 136, 176, and 180 Merriman Avenue, from Highway Business District, Community Business 1 District, and RS8 Residential Single Family High Density District to Highway Business District conditional zoning in order to facilitate additional out-parcel development in addition to the Harris Teeter store, and a modification request to the landscape buffer. Ms. Tuck will introduce this issue. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Bellamy, members of council, and members of the public. This request for conditional zoning of several parcels located on Merriman Avenue and Eloise Street was previously reviewed by the City Council at your January 22nd meeting. At that time, there was a moderate amount of community comment expressing concerns primarily focused in 3 areas. The first area was traffic impacts and the need for pedestrian and safety improvements, delivery truck traffic movements and activity, including idling, drive-through businesses and associated impacts, including noise, idling, and smells. After hearing from the community, the developers requested a continuance so that they may have an opportunity to review the concerns that were expressed and to see if that there were other measures that could be considered to help mitigate the potential development impacts. City staff also took the opportunity and reviewed the concerns and spent some time developing potential off-site improvements that may benefit the community, and had the opportunity to discuss these potential improvements with the developers. And as a result of these discussions, some additional conditions have been agreed to by the developers and the property owners that, if supported, would become conditions of this project's approval. And these conditions were included as attachments and they are part of the public record, but for everyone's benefit, I was going to go ahead and review them individually. So to begin with, the first 11 conditions that are above this dashed line were previously discussed at the January 22nd meeting, and that was part of the former staff report and discussion, and so I'm not going to go over those. But the new conditions, which are those 6 conditions that are below that dashed line, are what I was going to focus on. So the first condition is that if a drive-through facility is located on the site, it shall be located to the south of the signalized access point and fronting on Merriman Avenue. So fronting on Merriman Avenue are these buildings here. This is Merriman, located at the bottom of the page. North is to the right. And south of the signalized intersection would be this area here. This is the Harris Teeter building that's currently under construction, so this is the only area that's south of that signalized intersection. So if supported, it would limit any potential drive-throughs to this site only. So that is as far away from the residential streets and uses that we can get on this particular piece of property. The second condition is that any window at a drive-through facility shall have hours of operation limited to between 6 a.m. and 12 midnight. The third condition, that $10,000 per building, not including the Harris Teeter building, will be provided to the city as building permits are applied for. The money shall be used exclusively for pedestrian and traffic safety infrastructure in the vicinity of this project and tie in with existing road and pedestrian infrastructure. The first priority for these funds will be the construction of pedestrian improvements at the intersection of East Chestnut, Holland, Maxwell, and Monroe. So this is what staff spent their time kind of working on. Let's try to zoom out just a little bit. So what you see in black is the existing infrastructure. This is the Harris Teeter site here. You have Holland, East Chestnut, Maxwell, and Monroe. We worked with our transportation staff and our public works staff to kind of develop a proposal. We have long identified this intersection as being sort of problematic, and particularly from a pedestrian safety standpoint. It's unusually wide here across Maxwell, and just the confluence of Monroe and Maxwell just kind of makes it tricky to navigate. So the proposal is to extend the sidewalk infrastructure and to neck down this wide intersection to make it a little bit safer. We would also add a regular crosswalk here across Maxwell and Holland and a high visibility crosswalk across Chestnut. We would also add, or as part of that sidewalk extension, we would include handicap accessibility ramps, and we would retrofit, where necessary, accessibility ramps in the existing sidewalk infrastructure. So all of this combined will really improve that intersection. So moving on, the fourth condition is that a sign will be erected on the subject property at the exit onto East Chestnut Street that reads, "No right turn for delivery trucks," and that would be in the direction heading west. So that would be at this entry point in and out of the property, so it would limit truck movement this way towards, into the neighborhood. The fifth condition is that signage shall be limited to the submitted plans. These will be presented at the hearing. At the time that we wrote the report, we didn't have those, but the applicant has since supplied this concept sketch. This is an ornamental monument sign, not to exceed 9 feet in height and not to exceed 8 feet wide. Just the sign portion of this monument sign is approximately 60 square feet. That's significantly less than what would be allowed, not just in the highway business district, but also in the community business districts. So we think that's a positive for the neighborhood. Additionally, all attached signage would not exceed what is normally allowed by ordinance and would be individually lit channel letters on a raceway. This, I don't have a photo example, but these are the types of backlit signs that you will often see in nicer retail establishments, so it's a nicer, higher quality type of attached signage. The last condition is that there will be an anti-idling policy for delivery vehicles in the lease sale documents for the building pads. Signage indicating no idling will also be placed in all loading areas. We believe that these additional conditions help address the concerns of the community. There was one concern, however, that has not been addressed in this list of conditions, and that is the concern over the food smells as a byproduct of a possible fast food restaurant. The developer themselves have done some research on this subject, and they'll be prepared to provide some information for your consideration. That concludes my summary, and you may now wish to open the public hearing.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing, beginning with the developer, and before the developer's representative or the developer comes, council, you have already gone through 1 hour of public hearing. So this is beyond our rules. And so I do want to state any comments can only be on the 6 bullets at the bottom of the page that are new information, and we will have a time limit. And so I need to deal with council 30 minutes. Okay, all right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor. My name is Steve Vermillion. I'm with MPV Properties. We are the developer on the property. I want address any of this. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I think she covered all of the things that we have committed to pretty well, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
May now the time
No,
to ask some questions?
no, after the public comment. Other members of the community wishing to address council? Yes, sir.
Okay, I read these bullets online at the library, and I really think they're all wrong in both directions. I wouldn't characterize them as consistently too lenient or consistently too strict. The height limit is far too strict. The smart growth is based on the concept of build up, not out. And so putting a 32-foot height limit on there is contrary to smart growth principles. The one suggestion I could have is that in excess of 32 feet, everything above 32 feet or above any height limit in the city could be restricted to residential. So that, the sky is residential only. And commercial has to be under 32 feet. So you have this big residential suburb that's up. I think I was listening to other comments, last time, and they kind of convinced me about no drive-throughs. And you have a basis to ban drive-throughs because you're giving them something. They want a rezoning of some of the other lots, and you give them that if he says no drive-throughs. So that's an even trade. And there's another problem with drive-throughs in that because after hours, a lot of places, the drive-throughs open later than the rest of it. And if you show up at that time, it's discriminatory because they only serve you. They won't serve you if you don't have a car. And no service to pedestrians. So you can add discrimination against pedestrians to the list of problems with drive-throughs, and I've been hit by that, and I remember my sister complaining many times about that. That she'd walk up to a place, when the inside was closed, and she couldn't, she'd get turned away. Especially before she got a car. And the 25,000 square feet, I don't know if that's each floor or if that's roof area. I can understand a limit on roof area, but a limit on floor area would impose essentially the same as a height limit, the number of floors. So I guess that's a question. Is that 25,000 feet per floor or that 25,000 feet total floor? Per floor, but if it's total floor, it means you can't stack up a bunch of floors. That's a violation of smart growth. Thanks.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sue Schweikart, and I live at 95 Mount Clair Avenue. And I'd like to recognize other people from the Five Points neighborhood. Let's stand up right now to say that they're representing us.
And are you asking for 10 minutes or for 3 minutes?
I'm asking for 10 minutes.
All right, and are these people who are standing up now giving up their time to allow you to speak for 10 minutes?
Colleen and Helen.
Okay, so everyone who raised their hand, their time, 10 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to speak again on this conditional zoning request. As a neighborhood, we have been greatly concerned about how this will affect us. We appreciate all the efforts of council, city staff, and others who have helped to try to make this situation less painful for us. We are not anti-development, as has been stated many times before. We simply hope for the best fit for our neighborhood, our quality of life, and for Asheville. As part of the conditional zoning issue, we in 5 Points are happy to see that conditions have been added that will reduce some of the concerns surrounding residents and that some traffic pedestrian improvements are included. However, we do believe that there are 5 development mitigation points that are still in need of being addressed, which are up on the overhead. The first point is we need to establish a calm residential zone. It is clear to those of us who live in 5 Points that we need our speed limits reduced to 20 miles per hour and traffic calming to slow down drivers and reduce cut-through traffic. Our narrow streets, most with incomplete sidewalks and on-street parking, cannot handle traffic at speeds higher than 20 miles per hour. Two-way traffic is forced to share less than 2 travel lanes, leaving drivers, pedestrians, and bicyclists in a dangerous situation. With all of the new development activity, Harris Teeter Phase 1 and 2, not even including Trader Joe's, it is imperative that we establish a calm residential zone which favors walking, bicycling, and neighbors over cars and trucks. These goals are fully supported by the Asheville City Development Plan 2025, the city's strategic operating plan, the Smart Growth Initiative, and Complete Streets Policy. Also, the North Carolina DOT Traditional Neighborhood Development Street Design Guidelines and Asheville's own residential street design standards support these needs. Additionally, it is very important to be aware that 110 other residential streets in Asheville are established at 20 miles per hour, which are wider, some of them are wider, have less density, have continuous sidewalks, or no on-street parking. We have compiled them in a spreadsheet for review. Also, I have some photo comparisons of the 20 mile per hour streets versus our 25 mile per hour streets. A lot of this has been sent to council already. Just looking at these, the 25 mile per hour streets are narrower and in general have parking, and those are in our neighborhood. And the ones on the left, which have sidewalks and everything else, are in the other neighborhoods. So I really don't understand why we are not getting the consideration for 20 miles per hour in our neighborhood. We've already been told that they're not going to reduce it to 20, but we don't believe that needs to be staying that way. We need to change that. I wanted to make it clear that our concerns about additional traffic related to this development were heightened when considering the type of traffic that will result from a fast food restaurant with a drive-through, which will generate more distracted drivers than other development types. The reason for our concerns is that speed and distracted driving kills. Per the U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Highway Administration Speed Concept Informational Guide, if a pedestrian is hit by a vehicle traveling at 30 miles per hour, they have a 45% chance of being killed. While if they were hit by a vehicle traveling at 20 miles per hour, they would have only a 5% chance of being killed. Combine this with the fact that a distracted driver traveling at 30 miles per hour takes nearly twice the distance to stop for a hazard, such as a pedestrian crossing the road, as an attentive driver. We are asking that council require the Transportation Department to review our streets using the 6 factors contained in the traffic calming policy, while also considering the 110 comparable streets in Asheville that already have speed limits of 20 miles per hour. We need our speed limits lowered to 20 miles per hour, pedestrian warning signs and no-through traffic signs added where applicable to establish a calm residential zone. The second point I'd like to make is that we need funding to facilitate a calm residential zone. To us, the choice is clear. Either the speed limits are reduced to 20 miles per hour in 5 Points and traffic calming is added to reduce speeding and cut-through traffic, or the many goals and plans, policies, and standards of Asheville are violated and we all suffer. The historic 5 Points neighborhood is sandwiched between 2 of the most dangerous corridors for pedestrians in Asheville, yet so close to our wonderful walkable downtown. Over the past decade, 5 Points has suffered from inappropriate and incompatible development. We are requesting that the City of Asheville commit to funding traffic calming pedestrian improvements in 5 Points, as it is a major need in this development mitigation effort. The third point is that we need additional considerations regarding the intersection improvements at East Chestnut, Maxwell, and Monroe. We are pleased that there are pedestrian improvements planned for the intersection of East Chestnut, Maxwell, Monroe, and Holland. However, we are very concerned about pedestrian and driver visibility at the corner of East Chestnut and Monroe, Maxwell, due to illegal parking on street there, which is very common, and request a permanent solution in the form of a curb bump out and pedestrian refuge, as well as a raised crosswalk across East Chestnut. Also, we request that stop for pedestrians and crosswalk signage be installed on East Chestnut and Maxwell Street crosswalks. These improvements will allow for pedestrians and drivers to have proper visibility at the intersection and for drivers to be warned to stop for pedestrians. The fourth point is, regarding the truck traffic restriction, we are very happy to see the addition of an anti-idling policy. which will help reduce diesel emissions and will be especially important to those living in close proximity to the development. We would like to see similar wording be included in any lease sales agreements as it relates to the truck traffic restrictions on East Chestnut. I've already asked Julie Fields about this. The wording is an essential component that will work well with the sign requirement, restricting trucks from turning right when exiting the East Chestnut exit. The fifth and last point is, we need the need for restaurant emission controls. I know that was mentioned earlier, and I'm glad they're still looking into this. We are still concerned about the odors from any fast food or other restaurants and are asking that they be controlled in an appropriate way, similar to what was done in Biltmore Village. In summary, I would like to say that we are pleased with the work that has been done to this point in an effort to mitigate the effects of this development, but there is still more to do. We would like to ask you to please help us make 5 Points a model urban neighborhood where affordable housing is still available, where young and old can live in harmony, and where we can be proud that all citizens will benefit from safe mobility, even if they cannot drive or just choose not to. Simply put, please see that these 5 development mitigation points are carried out. They will go a long way to help further mitigate the negative effects of a suburban-type development in an urban traditional neighborhood. We are hoping for healthy people living in healthy communities and think it should be everyone's goal, especially in a city like Asheville. And that's real quickly, I just wanted to show the intersection improvement that we proposed. The additions are in yellow and in green and the stars. And basically a raised crosswalk in the yellow was addition to what the city had proposed. The stars would be the yield or stop for pedestrians and crosswalk signage on both intersections. I've seen this many times used, and it's a great safety measure, and a curb bump out to keep people from parking. Because the problem that happens is when people park too close, when you're coming out of this intersection, you cannot see. So even with this intersection improved and more narrow like that, if they end up parking to there, which they will, because it's like a wild zone in our neighborhood with parking, people cannot see, and it will just be dangerous. And in fact, they will literally probably park on the crosswalk unless something is done about this. So a curb bump out and a pedestrian refuge would go a long way to making it safer for drivers and pedestrians crossing both of these locations. So I really just would like to thank you much for your time and consideration, and I really appreciate all the help and anything we can get to help us with that. Oh, and one more thing since I have a minute. I just wanted to show this. I worked forever on this. This is the list of the 110 streets that are similar to ours so we should deserve the 20-mile-per-hour limits. And I know there's been talk about that 20-mile-per-hour limits won't really slow down drivers, but we already have a sign campaign in our neighborhood to slow down drivers. If the limits were lower, we would put it on new signs that say the limits are lower and you must follow the limits. Please, we need this for safety. And this is a continuing of the list, and more list, and more list. And part of this at the bottom is our streets, and it's a great comparison. And I've sent this out to everybody on council, but if anyone would like a hard copy or needs or has any questions, I appreciate the time and effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? I think you gave your time up, sir.
No, he didn't. It was those two. They got confused. Sorry. He was on our...
I need to take this.
Mayor, City Council. My name is David Metz, and I live between Fulton and Broadway on East Chestnut Street in the 5 Points neighborhood. One of the main reasons why I live in this area is because I'm visually impaired, and I love to walk, and this is convenient to anything because I can't drive. So this is a perfect place for me to be living myself. So I love being in this area. But the situation, honestly, on East Chestnut, between Broadway and Merriman, honestly, is just ridiculous. There's way too much traffic, it's way too fast, and it's extremely hazardous. The traffic backs up, sometimes like 6 to 8 cars, idling out in front of my house, which makes it loud and it smells from the trucks and the cars. There's loud brakes coming from the trucks. It becomes basically a parking lot in front of my house sometimes, 2 or 3 times a day during early morning rush hour, evening rush hour, some lunch break. People cut through there, to get to Green Life and different places, for lunch. And, let's see, it's become a gauntlet with the extra cars and all this traffic coming through there. Sometimes you can't even open your door. Like when my partner, she drives and she tries to open up the door and there's always cars running by, so that becomes a problem. This is one of the crux spots for this neighborhood. That's where it really condenses in that one area. It's narrow and there's just way too much traffic, and with Broadway, it makes it a cut right through. So the traffic needs to slow down, and there needs to be much less of it, and it needs to be distributed and passed through in other places. The Five Points is a quaint, historic neighborhood, and more it is becoming a shortcut for cars and trucks going from Merriman to Broadway. Usually, there's 3 times a day, as I said, that there's a lot of extra traffic, which causes a situation where I do not even enjoy sitting on my front porch because of all these cars and all the things that I've before mentioned. Even sometimes I'm sitting in my house and the house just rumbles. It's really kind of, it's disturbing to my quality of life. I'm feeling as I'm being compromised, and I'm afraid once the Harris Teeter comes in and the Trader Joe's comes in, that this is going to be much more magnified, this situation. And I don't want to move because of what I said before. And I want our human desires to come before these corporate desires. The Five Points neighborhood is not a sacrifice. This is not something to be taken lightly. And big business comes in and think we don't want them to take over our rights and to hold us to squish our quality of life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that's it?
Yep. When the sound beeps,
Okay.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Yes, sir, in the blue shirt with the jacket. Thank you.
I hope I'm not out of order. Some of the comments pertain basically to the issue in general rather than the specific add-ons. With or without the rezoning, the development's going to be built, and likewise, the benefits and problems will likely be about the same. I'm really generally supportive of the project. However, I'm uncomfortable with the rezoning. The highway business zoning is wrong for that additional acre. Community business is adequate. They can develop that land with that zoning. The rezoning will allow the investors to optimize their out parcel development. There'll be 4, I believe, rather than the 3, but the city planners can correct me. And we're rewarding them then with an entire 8 acres of highway business. Make sure that the public receives an adequate value for this. If the Harris Teeter investors receive an upgrade in the rezoning, I buy an adjacent acre and I bump it up to the higher zoning, will other investors receive a similar accommodation? I don't think we should be adding another acre in highway business. I think it's a mistake. I think the wiser thing is to, if possible, rezone the out parcels to community business that they don't need that highway zoning on. What's causing the problem in all of this, while you're having these conflicts, is the wrong zoning that went there in the first place. On the traffic, the residents are right. Who do you believe on this? The professional engineers paid to make these studies, or the residents who travel these streets every day? And basically, the developer, what he's doing out of this, and over there we had one highway business, basically the auto dealership, and we're going to be getting 3, the Harris Teeter, the fast food with the drive-through, and the other. So they're getting 3 where there was 1. The traffic problems are going to come, but there's not much you can do. You can put the landscaping, you can put the pedestrians and try to ameliorate it. The basic thing is that we have highway business and you try to balance competing interests the best you can. This rezoning is not a need, but a want, and it's being traded for concessions. And the conditional added to something that's fundamentally wrong doesn't make it any more right, only perhaps a bit more palatable if you let it be. But I do understand your position in trying to keep the city going in terms of development as well as keeping the community happy. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't get his name.
I need your name, sir. I need your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mario Hernandez from Fulton Street.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am.
Other people.
How much more time we have, Maggie?
You have, you have 9 minutes.
That's all you have. And so, but I need 3 people to stand, raise their hand, who have not already given their time. All right, it's 3 minutes then. She gave her time already.
Oh, Becky, yeah.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Heather Rayburn, and I live on the corner of Woodrow and Holland. After the last community or council meeting, Julie Fields prepared a memo for the neighborhood detailing the things that could happen with the Harris Teeter development if council rejected the rezoning. And that was an excellent and very helpful document for our neighborhood. Chris Pelly, Mark Hunt, Cecil Bothwell, and I know that Esther met with, or told us they would do all they can to convince the developers to drop the drive-through, and we really appreciate you for reaching out on behalf of 5 Points like that. In the meantime, our neighborhood association met with the expectation that the developer would refuse to drop the drive-through. And just to recap, we objected to the fast food drive-through because of the negative impact on the environment, the idling car exhaust, litter, traffic, nasty smells, and the anti-pedestrian friendly design, as well as their significant negative impact on public health and the obesity and diabetes epidemic that we all subsidize through our health costs. So we went through Julie's list point by point to decide, well, what's the best of the 2 evils here? And after analysis, we decided to back the rezoning request in exchange for having them consider the new points. We're really disappointed that the developers are still considering a drive-through in rejection of modern urban neighborhood planning. And I hope that the traffic calming will help us. We really need that bump out because the people park there illegally, even though it's marked no parking. We already have serious traffic problems in 5 Points, and we're about to get hammered. We all know that. We've been told, well, if we fill out the traffic calming forms, which we're in the process of doing, all our streets, we hope we'll go to the top of the traffic calming list. But we're counting on council to fund traffic calming to help our neighborhood, and I know that hasn't been funded in 6 years. So, and just a quick answer to John Bull's absurd newspaper article.
We can only speak about the issues that are on the paper that's covered, the 6 issues.
Okay. Well, I think this is an inappropriate zoning, and it flies in the face of our community plan. And we do not accept the thesis that because Merriman Avenue has numerous examples of bad strip mall development, that we should be satisfied with marginally better strip mall development. And we reject the thesis that Asheville should allow inappropriate highway zoning in exchange for low-paying retail and fast food jobs. Our main objective is to have a healthy, walkable, safe, mixed-use neighborhood, period. And we could have had that with this development. And that's the heartbreak here. And I hope that you guys will fast track the proper zoning of things that are zoned highway business. I hope you'll fast track that so this doesn't happen in another neighborhood. Let's see. I think that's the very best thing that could come out of this. I mean, we're getting some concessions, but it's still, not what it could be. Wasted opportunity. I'd like to do a final aside to the developers about the runoff that happened last week.
We're dealing with the issues before us, and if you want, I think the developers will be around for you to talk. And you have one more of your neighbors who want to speak, who didn't give up his time to anybody. So if you want to wrap up, we can give him the final few minutes, and that way everybody will be heard.
Okay.
Did you have something that you want to give us so we can see? No, I'm talking Heather.
I want to give this to city planning.
Oh, okay.
It's this is what a real urban village looks like. We took this to Peterson and the investors when they proposed their urban village, and this is...
Okay. And yes, sir. And we'll get you to finish it up for everyone. And you actually have 3 minutes. Okay. If you can state your name for the record.
My name is Burton Coy.
Okay.
Monroe Place.
Okay, just a second.
Okay. You can
yes.
So just to make a few points, I appreciate the opportunity to participate in democracy. It's been a fascinating experience, and I thank you for all of your time. If this hadn't been miszoned in the first place, we wouldn't all be here, and it's an uncomfortable position for all of us. My hope is that you'll firmly fund the traffic calming measures this evening. Putting us on the list or prioritizing us or putting us on the top of the list is in de facto saying no, because nothing's happened in 6 years. So unless there's some specific hard funds set aside, it's not going to happen. One of the things I asked for was no through traffic signs, and just to consider that possibility. And I was told that no such thing existed. And I went downtown, and I can pass my phone around this evening in downtown Asheville, and took a picture.
Let's put it on the screen, because when you pass it around, we get to keep it. Because it becomes an exhibit, and so if this was to go to court, it becomes an exhibit, and we have to enter it into the records. And so don't make me have to confiscate your phone.
Okay, great. Thanks for the warning.
You're welcome.
Live and learn. So about 30 minutes ago, I went and took a picture of this sign in downtown Asheville. So the idea of no through traffic already exists. The signs are already up in downtown Asheville. It's at the corner of Buxton and Church Street. Okay. So that's one of the things I've asked for. None of the streets if you consider it a zone around this development, the only street that's wide enough for two-way traffic at the same time is Chestnut. Every other street is single lane. It's crazy to me that we can't get some kind of traffic calming for a residential neighborhood. Sunday morning I got to wake up, and Saturday morning I got to wake up at 7:30 and hear the beep, beep, beep of the construction, for one more weekend in a row. And then the last thing I would say is to look at this project cumulatively when the traffic studies are done, like Trader Joe's is a discrete little place, and Harris Teeter is a discrete little place, and Green Life is a discrete little place. The traffic doesn't happen that way. It happens cumulatively. If you've ever been to a Trader Joe's, you know that when you check out, they ask you for your zip code. They want to know where you're coming from. Basically, this is going to be a regional draw. You have people coming from all over the place to come to this. We're going to put SOS on our green shirts tonight for Save Our Streets. So help us. Thank you.
And I took a few minutes explaining about the phone, and yes, sir, Mr. 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
And you have to come to the mic and then start your 30 seconds after you state your name.
My name is Jesse James, no joke. I'm a concerned resident a little farther down on Merriman off Spears Avenue. Okay. I've heard from a lot of 5 Points, just wanted to voice people farther down Merriman. I don't think we need any more auto-oriented development or highway zoning any more than we already have. I moved there to be able to walk downtown, I haven't done it yet. Merriman's scary to walk down. And I really don't like the drive-through development. Just wanted to make my voice heard from resident a little farther down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jesse James. All right, that's all the time that we have allotted, and we're going to bring it back to council, and I know Councilman Pelley wanted to start the conversation.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple comments here. I guess first off, maybe for Ken Putnam, we heard a couple items here, Ken, that there's a significant number of city streets that do in fact have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, and what's the standard on that? And then the gentleman that just pointed out the no-through traffic sign, the standard on that. And then wanted to ask about the specific apartment building where the folks have cited the need for the bump out and the fact that there's oftentimes people disregarding the no parking signs, and what you suggest perhaps as a solution to that.
Let me start with the no-through traffic sign. Typically, a regulatory sign, which is black on white, the rectangular shape, needs to have an ordinance to back it up. So just like we have an existing ordinance in our city ordinances that allow us to put up no-through truck signs, we would need something similar to that for no-through traffic. As far as that specific sign goes, we will take a look at it because it's highly irregular that we would put a sign up on a power pole. We don't typically do that. And that sign could have been there for a good number of years. It does look like an official sign, so we'll be checking that out tomorrow. As far as speed limits of 20 miles per hour, yes, there are several streets. I don't know if it's exactly 110 streets or if there were sections of streets, but there are a great number of streets that do have 20 miles per hour speed limits on them, and most of those, if not all of them, have been created over the years. It's not like that we go out and say, okay, we're going to do this block of streets, and then all of a sudden they become a certain speed limit or not. But typically the way that we do speed limit studies is as by request. So literally every day we typically get a request from someone in the city that believes that vehicles are going too fast on their street, and they ask us to do a speed study, and then we do that. So we're constantly doing that, and speed limits get established over time. We try to bundle those together so that we don't overburden you all by coming every meeting with one or two requests for speed limit changes, so we try to keep them together like that. And then the last one, as far as that apartment building, yes, that section of Chestnut Street does have on-street parking on the one side, and many of the residences don't have other choices. The apartment building is probably one of those. But we are trying to solve the situation right at the intersection when we make the improvements to try to improve it. If signs are not working, then we would try to consider something positive like the bump out that the neighbors are suggesting.
Great. Thanks, Ken. And, a couple things I want to say. One is to Mr. Vermillion, we appreciate the fact that you have come back to the city and are addressing a number of the additional items that would add to this conditional zoning, and that's good because this, as we've heard from a number of people, it's not just the Harris Teeter, but it's the Green Life and then the Trader Joe's coming in. It's having a significant impact on this neighborhood here, and that as a city we have to be mindful of that. What I'd like to do, Mayor, is to, after we consider this motion, consider a second motion that deals with a traffic calming study for that neighborhood. Because as we've heard, the neighborhood essentially is, we've heard Ms. Rayburn say that they're prepared to support the conditional zoning. I believe the neighborhood is taking a leap of faith with the city of Asheville, and it's up to us to work with the neighborhood to help address this, the traffic impact of this development and the cumulative development there. And the beginning of that is the traffic calming study. And then if the study results determine that improvements are needed, that we're prepared as a city to make those funding choices to make that happen here. As we've heard, we've talked about all too often that we have a traffic calming policy in the city here. In many neighborhoods, jump through the hoops and demonstrate the support exists, but if we don't fund it, that doesn't address the problem. And as the members of council here, we need to be prepared to work with the community here if it's warranted after the traffic calming study. So again, I'd like to come back with that second motion, Mayor.
So did you make the first one?
Yeah. Yeah, I need to find it. Where is that here?
Mayor, while he's looking for the motion, I think Cecil.
Yeah, I'm gonna let him, so we get a motion on the table.
Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the zoning map amendment from Highway Business RS8 and CB1 to HBCZ conditional zoning, subject to the conditions recommended by staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission, and find that the request is reasonable based on information provided in the staff report and as stated in the staff recommendation.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and properly second. Councilman Bothwell.
Just have a couple of things to say and then a question for Ken Putnam. I think this should be public knowledge. Apparently, Chris Peterson says he told the newspaper about this a while back. I don't know which newspaper or when he told them, but Chris Peterson is one of the principal owners of the property. He informed me that they've had a contract with Chick-fil-A for a long time and that there's no way they can break that contract or that they'd be willing to break that contract. And in fact, because it was permitted under the zoning that's there, if they were to try to break the contract, there'd be a lawsuit and he would turn around and sue the city. So, I mean, our hands are tied legally as far as I can see about that. So hoping that there won't be a drive-through restaurant there is hoping that Chick-fil-A goes out of business, which some of us may have a feeling about. And I'm really saddened about that. I'm sad that that kind of zoning was allowed there for all this time. I used to live in the neighborhood, and that leads to my question for Ken Putnam. Has it ever been looked at in that neighborhood with an eye toward whether one-way streets would help? For instance, if Chestnut were one way from Broadway to Merriman, it would significantly affect the traffic patterns there.
Yes, you're correct. And one of the things that we would want to do as staff before we would entertain one way in any street is to get complete input from those affected property owners. Because a lot of times that even the people that would be involved with it don't fully understand the impact of what it might mean to one-way the street, especially if they live, we'll say, on the wrong end, and it forces them to go out of their way to get back home. But since I've been here, we have entertained that idea on a number of streets in the city of Asheville, and in those cases we've always come to the conclusion that it would not be in the best interest after we vetted it out. But we're definitely open as staff to put that on the table as far as a consideration.
Because I know when I lived on Fulton, it's one of those streets with parking on one side and only really one lane for driving then, and I guess there's the two sides to that, it seems to me. One is, if it's two-way, it forces traffic calming in a sense, because it's harder to go really fast if there might be a car coming at you. But on the other hand, there were a lot of times that it was complicated.
Right, and just to add one other thing, as we've been going through this process with the neighborhood, is we've come up with, we'll say, an unintended consequence that has nothing to do with the Harris Teeter or Trader Joe's, but it goes to the paint store that's further down the street on Merriman. We have learned that their truck deliveries routinely go through this neighborhood so that they can back in the loading dock, whereas there's frontage for that store right on Merriman. And so from our standpoint, we don't understand why they don't use Merriman Avenue. So we're pursuing that as well. But that's come up as we've been looking into this situation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Hunt.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of quick comments and one question, I think, for the developer. First of all, I want to thank the Neighborhood Association for engaging the way you guys have, and thanks for your nice words, Heather. I think that the history over time in Asheville is often neighborhood groups will dig in their heels and say, no way, no how, it's a simple It's a simple stance we're taking here. I think what we've seen, though, is that, Ken just said, there's some things about traffic planning that staff has learned through the dialogue we've had with neighborhood. I think that council has learned from the neighborhood. Some of the new conditions that have showed up this week compared to 3 weeks ago are a direct result of ideas that came from the neighborhood. And I think that we on council have learned something about trusting the dialogue with neighborhood folks to come up with best outcomes within reach. And so I just really appreciate that, and I hope that as we work with other neighborhoods across town, we can find that same sort of collaboration. Quick comment, a gentleman from Fulton Street made the suggestion that the highway business conditional zoning was perhaps a mistake compared to simply zoning these additional parcels as community business. And what I think I gathered through studying this is that it's really the conditions layered on with the highway business that actually make the zoning we're headed toward here for not just that acre in the corner, but much more of the property, more restrictive than the combination of fitting community business here and the rest there. So I ended up, for myself at least, settled that we did the best in terms of conditioning what can happen on this property with the zoning approach we had. We looked at that carefully. Question for Mr. Vermillion. I think, Ms. Tuck, in regard to the food odor concern, said that perhaps the developer was ready or willing to address the concerns, and we had some conversation about that a couple weeks ago. But Mr. Vermillion, would you offer any comments about ways that you and your lessee might be able to address that?
We are talking, I don't know exactly how to make it a condition, but we are talking with an engineer. In fact, got some information as late as a couple of days ago from a local engineer that had done some of the work on the Biltmore that was telling us that, the increases in cost in order to do that sort of filtering system, and whether or not, his opinion truly and what he sent us initially was that type of filtering system in this particular location, given its distance away from the residences, would not be effective. So we'd like the opportunity to take that a little further with him and try to figure out exactly what he's saying there. We just got that information, and we're more than happy to require them to do that sort of work, but we want to make sure that whatever it is, if we make them spend that additional money to do it, that it is going to be effective, is all.
Great. Well, I appreciate that and your perseverance on that. And if you would also share your findings with the folks in the neighborhood, because it was their suggestion that led to this study, and,
right.
And again, your collaboration on that is much appreciated. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries unanimously. The next public hearing is a public, yes, Bob. Oh.
Mayor, I talked about having a second motion relating to traffic calming in this situation here. And this motion would be to direct the city manager to cause a review of the traffic impact in the immediate area of the development and to bring to city council the recommendations emerging from that review.
Second.
I have a question. So are you saying that above and beyond the $30,000 that's being provided?
Yes. The thinking from staff was that that $30,000 would primarily be used on that one intersection, but that obviously the neighborhood is impacted beyond that much beyond that intersection by the development. And so this is be a traffic calming study of the entire surrounding neighborhood.
And Mr. Jackson, is that budgeted, or where is that coming from? Help us just get down the road with that.
What I believe the council member is suggesting is dedication of staff resources, which we do on a petition basis today. But this just really states it's a specific direction of council, and it doesn't rely upon a petition coming from the neighborhood.
So the petition that was mentioned earlier that they were currently doing does not need to be done?
If we received council direction to do a traffic study, we would forego that formal requirement.
Okay, so they won't have to do this, the community will not have to meet that requirement threshold. We're going to bump that to have the study done. And are we funding it through this motion, or would it?
Well, we don't know, as Ken Putnam can probably speak to that better, but what he has told me is that determining, you have to get your outcome before you determine the funding implications of that.
Yes, that's correct, and the motion does comply with what we have in the traffic calming policy, that City Council can give staff direction to study a certain area.
Okay, so we're just studying it without the promise that it will be funded.
Right.
Okay.
That's the way I understand the motion. Yes,
And
ma'am.
that's going to settle some issues. I think it's going to stir up more.
I think it will too.
I think that as part of the budget process, we need to really talk about traffic calming in that process. And my only concern is that if we approve your motion and it comes back that all those streets that have been named in the various, that were named and put up here tonight from the various speakers need some type of improvement, then our motion basically set forward the thought that we're going to fund all those. And I just want to be on the record as saying that that can't happen without us looking at the budget and to see where we are financially.
Well, I think what would happen is, the way I envision it, is a continuation of the process that's already underway. There's a neighborhood meeting on February 19th, and that the neighborhood, in collaboration with the transportation department, would determine what traffic calming improvements are needed.
Right, above and beyond the 30,000. I'm crystal clear on that. I just want us to understand that we may be setting a whole neighborhood up for a study, and then they get the study and they see that there may be some non-affordable things that we can't do just with the restriping one-way in streets. And I think that your motion is trying to put them ahead of what we heard last week in West Asheville, where we had neighborhood residents who've been waiting for a couple of years for traffic calming. So I just want to be clear on what you're saying and what expectations are out there. And so that's going to be difficult.
I had just a process question. So with the motion, explain to me again, Ken, maybe you could elaborate on the process for a neighborhood applying for a traffic calming study versus what this motion proposes. What would be bypassed? What would?
Well, typically, if the way the traffic calming policy reads is that the first step would be the neighborhood. Well, first of all, let me back up. A request may come that someone says, on my street, I believe people are going too fast. Would you study that? Well, we routinely do that, so that's no problem. And then the outcome of that might be a recommendation to lower the speed limit as a first step. But let's assume that that doesn't work, or there feels there needs to be more. Then the community can come back, and by filling out the traffic calming questionnaire, which also has a petition with it, but that petition is more of just people signing on that I agree. But the questionnaire says we as a community believe we have all these issues. Well, this community has already done a lot of that homework. It may not have been on our official questionnaire form, but they certainly have done a lot of work on that and trying to bring the concerns to our attention. And we have also been trying to go out there on the streets as we can and collect the traffic data to analyze it, how many cars are using the road, how fast they're going, and so forth. And that process is continuing. But obviously the concern is that we think that when this Harris Teeter is finished and open for business, when Trader Joe's is finished and open for business, that there may be a further impact to our neighborhood. But we really won't know that until we get to that point in time. And what I suggested earlier would be that we would continue our dialogue with the community, making sure that we definitely have all of their concerns on the table. We will also continue with our collecting of the data so that it becomes a baseline so that we can compare the impacts to see what impact that the new businesses have.
But
So that's already in motion.
But it sounds like that this isn't the right time to do that if you're going to get the final analysis after they're built. It seems like we should put this on a tickler to be examined as soon as they are open for a few months, as opposed to having that motion right now and people thinking they're going to get traffic calming next week. I just don't think that it would be fair when we don't have all the data that's needed. If we're going to get the baseline now, and that's already in motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, can I, just to follow up, just again on the clarification, what Chris is proposing, what would be different in what you're already doing, what you've already got in motion?
Well, if the direction from council is for staff, meaning us, to continue with what we're doing, there would really be no difference. If, however, if in the motion we need to go out and say hire an independent engineer to do it for us, then we would need, that direction, as well as a budget amendment to cover the cost for that study, not for not for the solution, but for that study.
Can you clarify then the motion, how it would be different than what staff's already doing? Or are you trying to more just solidify that staff continue to do what they're doing?
That's primarily it. I think what I have heard from the community is that we need, if we're going to go on record in support of the conditional zoning, we'd like some formal commitment from the city that if traffic calming is determined to be warranted, that in fact you're going to fund it to make it happen. And frankly, I believe that the community should continue with the traditional traffic calming gauging process of talking to the neighbors and getting petitions. And I really don't actually want to bypass that, because I think that's a helpful thing. It forces a conversation within the community. So if you're okay with it, I'm okay with withdrawing the motion here.
But I think it's okay for you to put on the agenda after it's built to get the numbers to see what's there, and that way we have a baseline to reality, and that way if there are issues, we know about it, and we'll see if the $30,000 that will be invested by that time, see if it's working. And so I think Maggie will tickle it for the agenda, and then Ken will come back and say, these are the numbers, and council, this is what we've found. Mr. Jackson?
Yes, and I would add that it would be helpful if staff had the opportunity, and this was the Vice Mayor's suggestion, to provide for you, and that way it's a public document and it's available to the community, a list of the traffic studies that have been done and what the findings are, and where we have found that there are action plans that would be appropriate, so you know that there is a list and there are neighborhoods that already qualify, and that we present that information to you, and that you have that in the next 8 weeks during the budget process, and you can consider at that point in time what would be something to add to the capital improvements budget, reallocate from some other infrastructure improvement. And so then the community, not just this neighborhood, would know that as risks are identified, that they've gone through the process and it's been determined, and then they are ranked in order of highest risk, that they would be in line for funding. I think it would also be an opportunity for you all to talk about policies about where perhaps more affluent communities are in a position to contribute to those, how you would want to treat those, because you would still want to address these public safety needs regardless of the affluence of the neighborhood and their ability to share in the cost. So we would propose that the work of the staff continue in this neighborhood and other neighborhoods where people are concerned about their safety, and we provide the kind of objective analysis of what needs to be done, and we empower council with that kind of information, and you can consider the funding of what would put us on a track to reliably address this so that we show good faith with the neighborhoods.
I missed the Vice Mayor requesting that, but I will say this is already on the agenda for council's financial work sessions that are being planned with Lauren, not only this particular neighborhood, but the issue as a whole, because council needs to prioritize traffic calming, and if so, at what level going forward. Because as we heard last week, a week before last at a community meeting, this isn't an issue that's just based on in this neighborhood, that it continues to be an issue throughout our community. And so I think that data will be essential as part of the budget discussion. So if I'm hearing correctly, we're good with this issue. I want to go ahead and move on because we do have other people waiting for other issues.
One brief comment that we haven't discussed, Mayor, sorry to slow us down. I want to catch the State of the Union too. As I think Merriman Avenue has been historically treated as a highway. It's not a highway. It's not a highway anymore. It used to be a highway. It's not anymore. It's now an urban corridor. And it's my hope that following up on the discussion from the last council, we are going to be able to re-examine those zoning designations so we can get out in front of the next one of these so that we have the zoning designation is in harmony with the adjacent neighborhoods. And we are going to continue to be adding density. If you're a quarter mile away from the center of downtown, a mile away from the center of downtown, there's going to be more mixed use, there's going to be more dense housing. And one of the innovative pieces that I love in the additional conditions here is that 10,000 per building piece that's going to go towards some of those neighborhood traffic calming or pedestrian improvements. And I'm very appreciative that the developer is willing to go there, and that's something, that's the kind of policy I'd like to kind of learn more about going forward and see if we can help balance the density alongside the safety concerns. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate that, and we're going to move on to item B because we have people waiting to be heard tonight, and so that's why we're going to move forward tonight. Public hearing B, the public hearing to consider proposed amendment to the 2012-13 Consolidated Annual Action Plan for Community Development Block Grant and Home Partnership Act funds. 2, number 1, cancel home funding originally allocated to on-track for tenant-based rental assistance, and 2, to allocate funding for tenant-based rental assistance to Homeward Bound. Jeff Stottinger will make the brief presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and council members. This public hearing, as the Mayor read, is to make a change in our annual action plan for Community Development Block Grant and Home Funds for 2012 and 2013. I want to emphasize for the public hearing and for council that this action is at the request of On Track. You reviewed this in the fall around their CDBG allocation for the same program. This is just a continuation of this element where On Track, as it did its own strategic planning and looked at how resources were best allocated in the community, determined that it really was moving back towards its core activities, financial counseling, education, and that other agencies in the community were better suited to provide the services for homeless households in our community. And hence they were looking to free up those resources, particularly in this case the home resources that had been granted to them, so those resources could be better used in the community. The consortium, the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium Advisory Board, Board of Directors actually, endorsed that and is recommending that the $20,000 that was allocated for this purpose be returned to the pool and in fact be reallocated back out again to Homeward Bound to use for their rapid rehousing program. And the rapid rehousing program is designed to take people as close to the door of a shelter as possible and try to provide both the staffing resources which come from the Community Development Block Grant funds and from other resources that the agency raises, and use the home funds to provide short-term tenant-based rental assistance so the family can get into permanent housing and straighten out their economic situation and other issues from that strong base of permanent housing. The success rate for this method of assisting homeless persons is very high in the 90% rate. So this is to take the $20,000 from that year, and also, although this does not need a substantial amendment to our grant, also to reallocate about $2,700 that had been remaining from a prior year, and also put that to Homeward Bound for this affordable, for this rapid rehousing purpose. Homeward Bound indicates that this will help them to assist an additional 15 households. And I'm available to answer questions from the public hearing or council upon consideration of the resolution.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll open the public hearing to public comment at this time. Yes, sir, if you would just come forward, state your name for the record, and proceed with your 3 minutes.
I'm Alan Dittmore. In my work with Asheville Homeless Network, I've noticed that most people who are currently homeless are not custodial parents. And as a non-parent myself, I'm increasingly concerned about what looks like a disparity. I feel like my decision not to be a parent has placed me at greater risk of becoming homeless. Now, I don't know if this is federal funds, I don't know if the Fed set this in stone, but the idea that parents are being given priority over non-parents or non-custodial parents for rental assistance is a problem. Maybe not a problem in terms of apartment priority as much, although apartment priority is a problem. The bigger problem is apartment size. That I don't think just choosing to become a parent entitles you to a bigger apartment than, or a bigger assisted apartment than those who didn't choose to become parents. Now this might be, I don't know where this decision lies. Maybe it lies with you, maybe it lies with the private group, A-Hope, or Homeward Bound, and maybe it applies to the feds. If it applies to the feds, I'm barking up the wrong tree. If the decision is made by Homeward Bound, you can suggest to them or demand to them in the contract that childless homeless people be given a greater priority. Yeah, you could put it either as a request or a demand, or simply relay my request. But this comes from the right wing a great deal, and it seems to be loaded. But I'm somebody who supports tenant assistance. I just think it should be weighted differently. But I've heard the concerns of extreme right-wingers, and they have a point here. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address council? Yes, sir, in the back. If you could just state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address council.
City Council, Madam Mayor, Brother Christopher. Now, I too chose not to have children, and I follow a God that I think has common sense. Right now, I am housed. Right now, at my rate for my apartment, which includes utilities except for cable, will run about $7,500 for a year. If this city came to me and said, Brother Chris, we got a family of just a mother with a kid or a father with a kid, and this family needs housing, we want you to give it up. I'd say, no problem. But what I ask in return is a place where I can pack my tent and not worry about it getting cut up, tore up, and thrown in the trash and being charged for trespass. Right now, this city council says, and I know that one of the board members is talking with somebody about trying to get a campsite. If this city council is willing... And Brother Christopher, we're talking about rapid rehousing. I know. And not campsites. I know. But this deals with it. I'm willing, and I think that Homeward Bound should get the money. But at the same time, there should be balance. I think there should be priority to who gets housing. And I think that a family, because I wanted to make sure, since he was allowed to speak without interruption, saying that a single person like me should be able to take a house when you got a woman with 2 kids. And I disagree. I think that woman with 2 kids should get that house before I do. I think that they should get that rapid money before I do. But at the same time, I also require them give back. I do. I walk around this city when I come in, I pick up beer bottles. It's the only city in the world that I've lived in where I actually have to pick up condoms off the street, used and unused. which I will deal with at the end of this meeting. That's all I have to say for right now.
All right. Anyone else wishing to address council on the item on our printed agenda? All right. We'll close the public comment. Council, is there a motion?
I move to approve the resolution authorizing substantial amendment number 2 of the city's consolidated annual action plan.
Second.
The motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. The last public hearing is the public hearing to consider rezoning 1.35 acres on Possum Trot from Commercial Industrial District to RM8 Residential Multifamily Medium Density District. Blake Esselton will lead us through this discussion. Welcome.
Good evening. The area proposed for rezoning is just outside the city limits in the ETJ, not far from Brevard Road. The Ridgefield Business Park would be up here to the north. Discount Shoes is across Brevard Road a little bit to the south. The property is about 1 1/3 acres, is vacant, and is currently wooded. This area was zoned in 2001. This map here shows a little more clearly, the property is outlined in red, that the current zoning is consistent with the zoning to the north and to the west, but there are dissimilar zoning districts to the south and to the east. The applicant has requested that the property here be rezoned RM8, which is consistent with the zoning to the east. The applicant resides here on this property and owns this property as well as the subject property and is interested in reducing the development potential of the subject site. Ordinarily, staff might not be supportive of a request to downzone land so close to a major corridor that has some potential for mixed-use development. But in this case, there are some limitations that do prevent staff, or that allow staff to support this rezoning. The primary limitation here is the road Possum Trot here itself. It's a private right-of-way, and the right-of-way is only 16 feet wide. The right-of-way is too narrow to support commercial traffic, two-way traffic. You may have noticed that there is a commercial access here, but this is actually on separate property. It's separate from the right-of-way, and the vertical grade change here, the vertical separation, would make it prohibitively expensive to access this property from this paved area here. Staff feels that the RM8 zoning proposed is fitting for the infrastructure conditions as well as the geographic context. At their January meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval, and staff feels that the request is reasonable and is recommending approval. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you so very much. At this time, we'll open it up for public comment if property owner or developer would like to speak first. Yes, sir. If you could just state your name for the record.
My name is Stephen Garrett, and I do own this piece of property, and I also own the property to the east of that, and I don't want to do nothing but preserve it as it is, leave the trees and leave everything just like it is, make my yard bigger. It gives an excellent buffer from me and the highway, and there is a home down below it. I just like it the way it is. I don't want to develop it and put any kind of businesses in there.
Okay.
Thank you,
sir. Any other members of the community wishing to address council on this issue? All right, we'll close the public hearing to public comment. Council, questions, comments, on the motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries unanimously. We have three items under unfinished business. The first one is a second and final reading of ordinance number 4159, an ordinance adopting a comprehensive signage plan addressing a wide variety of signage needs for the UNC Asheville campus. Ms. Tuck? I don't know if you had a presentation or if we can just carry through. All right, council, questions, comments, or a motion? Councilman Davis?
Go ahead.
Mayor, I move to approve the sign package, and I've not gotten the wording, but as we talked about the last meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-2. The next item is a consideration of an ordinance amending the Biltmore Park Town Center signage plan for retail tenant identification signage. Ms. Tuck. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Bellamy, members of the council. On October 9th, 2012, the applicant, Biltmore Farms, requested an amendment to a previously approved sign package that was adopted in 2007 for the Biltmore Park Town Square development. This most recent amendment included two components. The first was for some additional attached office tenant signage for 4 large multi-storied buildings with large office lessees, and 2 off-site retail tenant signs to be located on the back of the parking deck and movie theater, both of which would be visible from Interstate 26. The office tenant signage was approved in October. However, the council recommended that the developer take additional time to explore other options related to the 2 large retail tenant signs. Biltmore Farms has now returned with a modified request related to the retail tenant signage, and that request includes a reduction from 2 to 1 off-site retail tenant identification sign to be located on the back of the parking deck adjacent to the existing project identity sign. This sign would be constructed with similar or identical materials as the original identity sign, would have the same vertical dimension of 26 feet as the existing identity sign, and would have a horizontal dimension of 37 feet for a total of 962 square feet, and that's just the background. The original commitment to limit the individual letter height to 4 feet is no longer proposed, and is instead, it's the background of the sign that ends up being the controlling factor for the size of the individual tenant signs. Here is a second image that was supplied by the applicant that shows sort of a photoshopped image of what that new panel sign would look like from the interstate, seated next to or attached next to the existing identity sign. The second part of this alternative is that there was a mural proposed in lieu of the second retail tenant sign that was to be located on the back of the movie theater. Art murals are not typically reviewed by our staff as part of signage, so that proposal is not included in this alternative request. The last thing I'll mention is that the applicant did explore some options for a freestanding pylon sign, but was not satisfied with its appearance or its effectiveness, and I believe they may wish to address this and other design alternatives that they had explored during their presentation. But here is an image of that sign, both in cross section as well as how it would be like, sort of what it might look like from the interstate. This proposed sign is 38 feet tall, 12 by 23 feet, or 276 square feet. So that just kind of gives you an idea of a sign of that size located on the interstate. That concludes my summary, and you may now wish to open the public comment and hear from the developer.
Okay, this is not a public hearing, so before we open it up for public comment, we do need something for the public to comment on. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve the sign plan as proposed. I have comments to make, but those might come better after a second, and I'd like to see the developer's presentation too before I offer further comments.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second. We're going to open it up for public comment now that we have something to talk about. If a representative from the developer would like to speak. Yes.
I'm Sarah Davis with Biltmore Farms, and I just want to thank Madam Mayor and the fellow council members for allowing me to speak on behalf of this subject. As I was preparing for my presentation tonight, I was of course very nervous, but kept coming back to an important document, and so I felt like I should really lead with it. It's the purpose of an urban village that is described by the city of Asheville. The purpose of an urban village district is established to create mixed-use development that is economically vital, pedestrian-oriented, and also contributes to the place-making character of the built environment. As I quickly run through some slides, we at Biltmore Farms know how important high-density urban villages are to the smart growth of our city. we've tried the theory of not using what we feel as adequate retail signage, and we don't feel that it works. And so we are asking the council members to consider allowing us to add an expansion to our signage to address our shortcomings, to allow other, hopefully, urban villages and smart growth developments to happen in the city of Asheville. I'm just going to quickly run through some slides and highlight our goals and our reasoning for our want to expand. As the city staff mentioned, we looked at some, that's upside down, murals. While we thought that they were aesthetically pleasing, given the location that we are trying to place the sign, you really wouldn't be able to see it. We also looked at some billboards around town and how retailers, other establishments use them, and unfortunately we feel like in our situation it just again would not work. One facade is the Asheville Mall. We felt that the backlit signs might help with some of our visual issues given the location of the expanded signage. And if I can politely say, we didn't really like the multicolored plexi on the front. So that brings us to our expansion of our sign. And we feel that by doing this, we already have 1,800 employees that come into Biltmore Park Town Square daily. We could use this sign to leverage additional retailers, where retailers and restaurants in the shopping center industry average about 50 employees. And we could use this to drive even more traffic, even more jobs to Asheville and Biltmore Park Town Square. And I'll close with that. Thank you.
Any other members of the community wishing to address council?
I'll take it as mine.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Patsy Bryson, an attorney with Roberts and Stevens. We represent a group of merchants in the Biltmore Village area who are strongly opposed to this proposal. First, I raise a procedural objection pursuant to Section 7-13-10-3 of your Code of Ordinances regarding signage plans. It provides that the submittal may be made at the time of the original consideration of the proposed development, or, not and, the language is very clear, or separately from the original development proposal. The first proposal was approved on July 24, 2007. Since then, there have been two other proposals approved, June 9, 2009, October 9, 2012. You're already two over. You can't do another. Simply put, it's not and, it's or. Without waiving that procedural objection, it does not comply with the purposes set forth in 7-13-10-1, cited in the staff report. We also adopted by reference the cons in the staff report. In our view, it's also a prohibited off-premises sign. There are 5 parcels included. This sign would be located on one of those parcels, advertising businesses on another parcel. It is a prohibited off-premise sign under 7-13-5B. In addition, the staff report notes that this is approximately 6 times the size of an average billboard. Pardon me. If you look at the 2009 staff report, the square footage of an average billboard is 300 square feet. Actually, this is 7, the cumulative size is 7 times an average billboard in the community. In addition, it's contrary to the urban village district description found in 7-8-23-3. The urban village district is to celebrate Asheville's distinction from other cities. This clearly does not. In fact, this is a terrible precedent. It's nothing but a gigantic billboard, certainly not in keeping with the urban village concept, and certainly not in keeping with other type of village concepts. It also is an unfair competitive advantage to merchants in the Biltmore Village area, and yes, even to merchants in the downtown area. We believe this precedent is unwarranted, and we respectfully urge you to defeat this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to address council? Yes, ma'am. And if you could just state your name for the record.
Hi, my name's Kathy McCartan. I live at 1364 Heathbrook in Biltmore Park. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm against the proposed additional sign for several reasons. According to the municipal code, variances are supposed to be granted to remedy problems created by an entity other than the owner. For instance, if the Department of Transportation elevated a roadway and caused your commercial property not to be visible, a variance would probably be in order. If the road was moved after you purchased your property and you would no longer be able to meet the setback requirements, a variance would probably be in order. Variances are supposed to be a rarity granted in extreme circumstances because they will set a precedent for anything that comes afterward. According to the planning staff report, the existing Biltmore Park Square identity sign is the largest in Asheville, and it's the result of a zoning variance. According again to the staff report, the additional sign that is proposed in combination with the existing sign will be 6 times, now 7 times the size of a standard billboard. This will also be a zoning variance. What happens when future developers point to Biltmore Park and accept the same consideration? I realize that each site is evaluated on its own merits, but a precedent makes it more difficult to reject someone else's request in the future. In my opinion, personally, the combined signs are aesthetically unpleasing and are not proportional to the site. The 575 families that live in the residential section of Biltmore Park, plus those who reside in Town Square, will look at the sign every day. Many in the neighborhood consider the proposed sign to be an eyesore, as your email inboxes will show, since several people wrote to you today. The Town Square is unique, and it's beautifully done, and it is one of Asheville's gems. The city is trying to encourage this mixed-use, small-footprint land-use model. Why make it resemble a shopping mall by allowing this garish sign? I've read the applicant's memo explaining their belief that the reason that the final 30% of available space hasn't been leased is because of the lack of interstate-facing identity signs. Biltmore Park has exit markers on I-26 alerting customers to its location. They see the large Biltmore Park Town Square identity sign in the garage. They see retailer signs at CVS when they turn onto the property. As an alternative to the sign, why not list major retailers on the wall behind the movie theater? Or even better, why doesn't the developer list the retailers on the roadside billboards? That way, it will have less impact to the people that live there and frequent the Town Square businesses, and it will also not require a variance to set a dangerous precedent. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Who wants to speak to the printed item on our agenda? You can state your name for the record.
Brother Christopher, City Council, Madam Mayor. Hey, it looks like we get to see an election test for this coming up election. Will the saying be for Asheville after the decision on this? Will it be, come to Asheville where money gets it your way? Or will it be Asheville be known for a city who keeps its own words and its own laws? I didn't hear about this till just now. But it reminds me of how many times I have said, because I haven't been here for a while, to this city council, that if you don't keep your word to one, you can't keep it to anyone. You gave Biltmore your word a while back. You set ordinances and standards. You said, come and buy in Biltmore Village, and this is what you can expect. But is it Biltmore Village or Biltmore money that this city listens to? Second to last meeting I was here, I watched the Biltmore money speak for over 40 minutes to this city council. And the city council just let the money talk. So the question when they go to vote this year will be, do we vote for the ones who go for the money or for the ones who go for righteousness, truth, and justice for all?
Any other members of the community wishing to address council? If you could just state your name for the record.
My name is Paul Zurich.
and I work in Biltmore Park for Biltmore Farms, and I'm the secretary of the Biltmore Park Town Square Condominium Association. And I'd like to pass out some slides with some data. These are always difficult discussions, and there's no getting around it. Kathy and I are friends. We agree on 90% of everything. I care about Kathy. I care about people with her point of view. And I'm sorry, to bother her or offend her. We have to think about a lot more than just, whether the sign fits into a square box or something like that. We have to think about the people who've invested in their retail businesses here, the workers in the stores, the residents and the employees in Biltmore Park, and even the visibility and the effectiveness of a concept, this high-density mixed use that has tremendous potential to achieve smart growth for Asheville and conserve land. We've had, as Sarah pointed out, we went and looked at a lot of other signs. We also got a lot of feedback from the community. And the reason we went with the addition to the existing sign is because of the feedback that people like that sign. They like the existing sign. The ones that like it, it evokes San Francisco and Silicon Valley in a positive way. It speaks to the technology orientation of the park. And yes, it's bigger than a billboard. It's also set off from the highway about 8 times the distance of a standard billboard. So to be visible from that direction, it has to be there. As you know, this was something that was originally requested. We believed it was necessary. We agreed to try, it as staff and the council suggested without this type of signage. And we find that it is necessary. And if you want, we can prove, we've survived a recession. This thing opened up right as Lehman Brothers was going down. We can show that private developers can build large parking garages and not require, the city to do it for them. But we're not over the hump yet, and to get there, we've got to have this kind of signage to make the whole ecosystem work. Wanted to just give you these slides to show you we don't just listen to what people say about what they like and don't like. We try to actually look at data to see if any harm's being done or if things are good. The existing sign is there, and as you can see, if you look at the data, it will show you that everything looks good in terms of house sales and everything else in Biltmore Park. So these signs are not a negative, and I really hope you'll approve it so that this development template can go forward here and elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council? All right, we'll close the public comment. We have a motion and a second, and Councilman Hunt, I believe you want to lead the discussion.
Sure. I had some comments I wanted to offer, but I'm curious, Mr. Ost, in regard to the assertions that Ms. Bryson made about consistency of this proposal legally with our ordinances and all, what comments would you have for council?
Well, I didn't make note of her comments in detail, but I would point out that the first paragraph of the section pursuant to which this signage plan is being proposed says, notwithstanding the other provisions of this article, the City Council may, at its sole discretion, approve a signage plan for certain development projects listed in this section. The approved signage plan may include signs of different sizes, types, locations, placement, and height from those otherwise enumerated in this article. And among the projects listed is urban village projects.
Thank you. Well, in terms of my own view, I've been very torn about this. I am not a fan of increased commercial signage in the community. I strongly oppose the electronic billboard as it emerged on Merriman, and strongly supported the change in the ordinance for electronic billboards that we passed a few months ago. In this particular case, the development is a smart growth development. It is high-density, mixed-use. It is environmentally responsible. It does a number of things that promote sustainability well beyond what traditional type development does. It is the case that there is a 30% vacancy rate on the retail front, and I think it's in the community's interest to see developments like this succeed so that there can be more in the future. This is the kind of development we need to promote and see happen in this community. In regard to this particular sign, it is significantly larger than billboards that are typically seen along the interstate. It is set back, however, significantly further from the interstate. And I did some geometry calculations earlier today to see if I could assess how, two images compare at different distances. And the impact of this is not much different from a standard billboard right along the interstate as they usually appear. It takes up a similar percentage of field of vision. As I've wrestled with how to come down on this, I came to one sort of view, and that is that while a sign of this scale it would not be my first choice in general, allowing this sign and the result being the filling of space in the town square by retail tenants is a better outcome from the city than having retail demand go to another strip mall at some other intersection outside the city where zoning would not control and where we would have no authority to zone. So again, I've been torn about it, and I moved the adoption of this because I think on balance it's the best thing for the community.
Councilman Bothwell?
My decision on this question largely hinges on the question of precedent and the fact that we create sign ordinances. We've adopted a sign ordinance in the city and gradually tweaked it over time in order to generally tone down the signage. I often think about a drive I took from New Hampshire to Vermont many years ago, and how suddenly the landscape was different. And it didn't really strike me. I didn't really get it until much later. I realized New Hampshire has almost, or at least then, had no limits on signs. There were signs everywhere, and Vermont had strict limits on signs. And it was a much, much pleasanter place to drive through to visit. In fact, they have uniform, every business has a certain color code and all. I mean, you don't see any billboards at all. And then I think of going to Hilton Head Island about 15 years ago and seeing a Walmart sign that complied with the very strict rules on Hilton Head. It was brown and beige. It wasn't a standard Walmart sign, and it was only about 6 feet off the ground. They complied, and the Walmart was still busy. Personally, and I know taste is always in the eye of the beholder, I find the current sign at Biltmore Park, it repels me from there. I don't think of that, I don't believe, when I see that sign, I don't think of an urban village. I think of in-my-face commercialism. I think of a mall. I know that's not what it is. I think it's a tremendous development. I don't mean to denigrate the development at all, but the emails we've been getting have all been from people who share that view. They don't like the sign that's there already, and they don't want it to be this much bigger. I don't understand making variances that for problems that a person creates for themselves. As one of our speakers said this evening, a variance is supposed to be to solve a problem that wasn't of your own making. The developers decided to do this development there. They did all their advanced planning, their due diligence. They figured everything out as best they could, and they're having some trouble with retail, but they've got incredible occupancy rates according to this paperwork here on office, on hotel occupancy, on apartment occupancy, so it's working in a lot of ways already. And I just simply can't vote for a variance in this case.
Any other comments? Councilman Pelley, Councilman Smith.
I have a couple questions for you, Mr. Zurich. Thank you. One of the emails today, I'm sure there's probably an easy answer for this, but suggested why did not the owners elect to use the interstate signs like the hotel and restaurant signs that you see before interstate exits? Because they pointed out that this sign is, frankly, you're past the exit as you're driving towards Asheville on I-26 to get benefit from this.
My understanding from our sign people is that you can't put stores on those. They're like for lodging, gasoline, and food, and that's all that can go there.
Okay.
I mean, you know, a lot of what is going on here, and I appreciate what you said, Councilman Bothwell, is dictated not by the developer's desires, but by the conditions of the site and the goals of high-density mixed use, where you've got to put that parking deck where it is. And as Sarah showed you the sign of the mall, if we just did a regional mall, you know, we'd have all the signage we want facing the interstate, but we'd have no high-density mixed use, we'd have no parking deck, and there's no place else to put the parking deck but where it is. And so, you know, your choice is you either have a bare parking deck there or you put the sign there. And I totally accept that, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I actually don't have very good taste in things, but I was surprised, quite honestly, by the strong comments we got in favor of this sign and how it evokes images of, as I said, San Francisco and Silicon Valley. So, you know, those are just things that people are going to disagree about. But I think to make this concept viable and to have parking decks like this and have them be able to be funded by private developers, this, you know, there's no other place to put this signage than here.
One other question for you, kind of more theoretical, but a couple of years ago, this city had a big fight over the Staples had a sign that fronted facing Interstate 240, and it was a lot of people, it was out of compliance, and ultimately it was reduced in size. But what would you say if we were to allow this here and then the owners of the Asheville Mall want to take advantage of their proximity to I-240 and want to erect large signs that people can see from that roadway?
They already have more signage facing their interstate than we would have collectively with this. And we did take the Staples sign precedent under advisement when my colleague Jack Cecil and the others in our office that actually do have taste, you know, designed the original sign. They chose the black subdued background so that it would screen the parking deck but not just scream at people going by, and they made the red in the Biltmore Park letters a more subdued red, not a fire engine, you know, or Oklahoma University red.
Thank you.
Appreciate the process y'all went through from October till now. I got to say, haven't seen this. I actually preferred the original design that you brought in October, but here we are. I think that we've got a real special relationship with Biltmore Park due to the fact that this whole thing came together as a result of an agreement between the city and the developers to voluntarily annex into the city. And when this sign package was done, it was the developers and city council who initially came up with what's there now, is my understanding. And so, as far as the developer created their own problems, I think that it might have been done in partnership and not alone. I don't really see it as precedent. This is precedent setting. I think this is it's kind of the last chapter of these promises that we made to each other, where we wanted to see Biltmore Park be successful and be a vibrant part of that area of Asheville. And so I'm going to be supportive tonight.
All right, any other comments? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-2. Council, we usually take a break around this time, but we only have a couple more items to go, and I figured we just can go ahead and finish the items on our printed agenda. The next item under unfinished business is C, the confirmation of essay questions to Asheville School Board of Education candidates. And all of you have been provided our list of questions.
Mayor, I think that, did you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Vice Mayor?
No, go ahead.
Just very quickly, you'll find in front of you 2 pages stapled together. The back page are the questions submitted by each member of council to Maggie, and the top page is Councilman Smith synthesizing. I'm making up words here. I'm like George Bush. Of all of those questions.
Mine is not on here, and I'm not okay with that.
Okay, yours is not on here. Okay. Well, some of them were blended, and there was some artistic license taken.
I think mine was too artistic.
To clarify, we're supposed to distill this down to 5 questions traditionally. Isn't that the case? Okay, so.
And I yielded last time, and in light of the recent arrest of a predator at a local school, I'm not happy with some of the things that have turned out since that time, and I want to make sure we have school board members who understand the sensitivity to having predators in our school and dealing with abuse, and ensuring that policies going forward ensure we have the utmost protection for our kids in place, and so that has to come at the policy level.
Why don't we, Mayor, if it would be appropriate...
That's the only question I have a concern with.
Can we put that one under health and safety and just add it as a question?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
And it was my intention to fold it in there. That was the meaning of the protection from violence, but I understand that the question that you submitted was more detailed, Terry.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. It had nothing to do with really violence, but thank you.
Is there anything else, any other question, or is everyone okay with otherwise the distilling of the questions into these categories and the questions that resulted adding to that word for word the question provided by the mayor under the health and safety category? Is that all right? Is that okay? Okay, do we need to vote on these, or it looked like I just looked around and there was nodding?
Last time it was affirmation, and these will be sent out.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question, Mayor. Are these questions available to the public now, or do we prefer to send them out at a certain date? What is the procedure? I know there are a number of applicants and folks watching that are curious about how this process will unfold.
We can do it either way, but what we normally do is wait until after the application deadline, which is February 25th, and then send the questions out to all the eligible applicants. But it's up to council if they want to have them.
I'm fine with that. The questions are set, and that makes the playing field fair, doesn't it? So I'm fine with that. Thank you.
So waiting until the application deadline.
Unless anybody has a different view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have under new business, A, the resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Cherry Beckert and Holland for auditing services for fiscal year 2012 and 13. Ms. Bradley is going to make the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Bellamy and City Council. I am going to introduce to you Eddie Burke, who is the partner from Cherry Beckert, who will be working on the city's account if you choose to award the contract. To give you some quick history, you'll recall that City Council modified your financial policy for audit requirements, where we would issue an RFP for audit services and that we would have some mandatory rotation based on the results of the RFP. We went through that process and had a rating that was both qualitative and on cost. The top firm based on that process was Cherry Beckert. The Finance Committee was updated on that process as we went through it and could answer any questions that you might have about it from their perspective. But before that, I will introduce Mr. Burke to you and allow him to tell you some more about his firm.
How do you load this?
I think it should be as easy as
Okay. I can do your audit, but I cannot deal with computers. How about that? Very happy to be here. I am Eddie Burke. I'm a partner with Cherry Beckert. I know it's late in the night, so I'm not going to take a lot of your time, but what I really wanted to do very briefly is just tell you a little bit about our firm, a little bit about the office that will be responsible for making sure that you're served properly. I'd like to introduce the engagement team and give you a little bit of background about who will be working on the city engagement. Very briefly, a few comments on the government services group, and then we've got a list of some of our existing clients, and I'm sure the finance department has already called some of those for references at this point. Very briefly, the firm is 65 years old. We started in Wilmington, North Carolina. We've been around a long time. We're actually one of the largest CPA firms headquartered in the Southeast. Our offices range from the Washington, D.C. area down to Miami, with offices all up and down the East Coast. Our employee count is about 1,000 professionals. And right now we currently rank in the top 30 in the nation as far as CPA firms. The Mid-Carolina practice will actually be the office that is responsible for making sure that y'all are served properly. That office is actually the office that takes care of all of our state and local government practice. We have centralized that to make sure that we're consistent and we're following the rules and we're keeping up with everything that needs to be done. Currently, our client base, we have about 30 cities, counties, towns, and school boards across the state. And as I go into the engagement team and give you a little bit about their background, you'll see about the experience level of everyone. I've already introduced myself. I have 30 years experience in state and local governments. That's all I do. I practice in 3 states, Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida. I practice in different states because they have different year ends, and I can do state and local government work throughout the year. I just came from Florida, Key West. We do the work down there, so I spent the last 2 weeks down doing that. I know that's a hardship, but I hope y'all are, I'm sorry, I won't, that's supposed to be a joke, but that's as funny as I can get, okay? Michelle Thompson, she'll be our quality review partner. Every audit engagement is assigned a second partner to make sure that we follow professional standards. Michelle is actually the director of A&A for the firm on a firm-wide basis, has a lot of state and local government experience. She has about 20 years experience. Lonnie Keogh, who's the senior manager, she works entirely in state and local governments. She's about 30 years experience. She'll be making sure that our day-to-day activities are following the standards and that we're following the audit plan that we lay out with management on the front end. Then at the very bottom, Justin Parks is a senior. He does primarily state and local governments. He's got over 3 years experience. Millie Washburn, she'll be our IT manager. She's got over 10 years experience, and she'll be in charge of looking at your IT systems, making sure that the control environment surrounding the IT is adequate for our audit. The government services group, we have a fairly large group in our practice. We have about 250 professionals that work in the state and local government. Our state and local government practice is primarily 3 states, Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida. And currently we serve over about 150 units across the Southeast at this point in time. Just to sort of give you a quick view of our municipalities that we serve the largest 6 or 7 cities in the state of North Carolina currently. Over to the right is how long we've been serving them. And then as far as the counties, we serve the largest 6 counties in the state of North Carolina right now. And again, over to the right is the years that we have served. So to give you a really quick brief overview of the clients that we currently serve, and I'm not going to read all of them, but you can see we have a substantial amount of experience in state and local governments. And in closing, I would like to say that we're very, very excited to have the opportunity to serve the city of Asheville, and I mean that very sincerely. I was telling Lauren, was it a couple of years ago, y'all have actually been on my list for 10 years. I love Asheville. And I'm looking forward to spending some time in this area. We've already started looking for condos, just to be honest with you. That concludes my comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have about myself, the firm, or any other questions you might have at this time.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We look forward to hearing you with the preliminary numbers at the end of the fiscal year. And so, great. Council, we need a motion. Did we get a motion? No, I don't think we got a motion. We just got an open comment.
I move that we engage the firm for our audit services as proposed by staff. Thank you.
Second.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Turn over to the Vice Mayor for our boards and commissions.
Thank you, Mayor. Just moving through these items on the agenda, the Citizens Police Advisory Committee, we are re-advertising for the vacancy there. The Community Relations Council asked us to postpone this for any appointment for 1 month while they finalize their strategic plan. And we were in agreement with that. That was fine with boards and commissions unless council prefers to do something differently. And then we had some applicants for the Tree Commission, and Boards and Commissions recommends appointing Matthew Schlosser and Jonathan Gack, or we weren't sure how to pronounce that. Some of the applicants here didn't appear to be, I don't know that eligible is the right word, but we had a couple from the county apply, and we had one that was only a part-time city resident, so there were some funny issues like that. So we're recommending the appointment of the two that reported that they were full-time city residents.
I move to approve those two by one vote.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, finally, not on our agenda, but that we wanted to bring up for discussion was the issue of the Airport Authority board representation from the city of Asheville. Just to bring everyone up to date, we obviously had airport legislation enacted last session that barred elected officials from serving on the new Airport Authority board. That legislation did say, just to clarify, that anyone serving at the time it became effective would continue serving. So currently the city has Dave Hillier as its appointment and the mayor. Now the mayor is an elected official, and so the new authority, I don't know if doesn't recognize the appointment. I'm not sure what the right terminology would be for that. But in any event, we're concerned about having representation on the new Airport Authority board and wanted to discuss tonight whether to move forward with appointing someone pursuant to the legislation. Boards and commissions recognize that obviously, Mayor, we would enjoy having your representation on that board. Were we able to continue to have that representation, and we're concerned about Asheville's representation on that board, but we are also very concerned about having an empty seat, so to speak.
I asked Mother to have you all look at this, and I'm fine with appointing someone to serve in my stead since I had a law created that I couldn't serve. But I'm not supportive of Dave Hillier continuing to serve as a representative from the city of Asheville. He does not represent the council's views, nor has he represented the views of our stakeholders. And so I am not supportive of that, and so I don't see it just as one appointment. I see it as two appointments.
Very well. If we're in agreement with having to address this board generally, what we would recommend as the next step is advertising. There hasn't been any advertisement yet, so we could move forward with advertising it and give, maybe I would suggest give Bob an opportunity to update boards and commissions regarding the process that might be used for what you're proposing. How about that? Since I'm trying to recall, I understand that the appointments differ for different boards.
This is a new board, and so we should actually be able to appoint new people to the new board. And so because this is a new board, we don't have appointments because we have not technically appointed anyone to the new board. So as a matter of fact, all three positions should be technically open because they are representing the city of Asheville, and we didn't affirm them in those capacities except for my seat, but the other two have not been affirmed as our representatives to this new board. And I'm okay with looking at both individuals. Bob, am I correct in that?
These are issues that I haven't had a lot of time to think about. I'd be glad to look into that and report to council at my earliest opportunity.
Well, I also want to point out, I don't even think they have anybody who are licensed pilots on the board anymore. And so we definitely need to at least have the consideration of having someone who has a license or who used the FBO on this board.
And my understanding is under the new board, the city will have a total of 2 appointments. I guess Mr. Roberts finishes his term. I'm not exactly sure how that works. We have 2, the county has 2, and Henderson County has 2, and then the 6 will appoint a 7th, and they've just done that. They've appointed Ray Bailey as the 7th. So I think what we can take away from this conversation is that we'll definitely advertise, and then we'll bring back to boards and commissions the next steps.
I would like for the full council to have the discussion and not just the boards and commissions.
Bring it forward in terms of the, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can't take any action in terms of removing or appointing anyone anyway.
I have a related legal question. It's come to my awareness that the Federal Aviation Administration has indicated that the contract that they have for money, for the funding for like runways and so forth, is a contract with the city of Asheville. It's not a contract with this new airport authority, which suggests that this new airport authority has relatively limited authority, at least in terms of the major capital improvements that happen there. And I'm wondering, what's our legal relationship now then, if we have to apply for and approve funding for airport projects now, but we're no longer in the same position we were vis-a-vis the new airport authority. The state legislature has put the airport authority in a very, very weird position, I think. And I'd like to know more, what does that mean? I mean, so we can go build a runway somewhere else because we have the federal contract. Let's move back to the old airport. I don't know. I just would like to know, be more clear.
These are complicated questions, but I think I can provide council an explanation that will help you understand where we are with this. The FAA does have some oversight of this, as you all know, and so I'll report to council on that at my earliest opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for boards and commissions.
Okay, and I just do want to announce again that the Asheville City's Board of Education, the deadline is February 25th at 5 p.m. for those applications to be submitted. And we do have an individual who signed up to speak. Mr. Charlamonte.
Good evening, Brother Christopher. Here in my position as the prophet of Asheville. There's a saying I have, which is, if the head is corrupt, so is the body. I'm going to give you an example. Believe it or not, my church, the Tabernacle of God Church of Asheville, if the North Carolina Supreme Court had read my brief in my appeal, would now be bringing millions of dollars into this city. But corruption from the head goes downward. To give you an example, North Carolina Supreme Court stated that they would not read my brief. The Assistant Attorney General in 2011, Belshare, asked me who I was, and when I told him, he said, "Would you like to know I was the one who fought against your brief?" And the reason that would you like to know the reason that they decided that they weren't going to read it. You could take it to the Supreme Court because corruption follows money. And if I would have won, it would have meant a lot of money. A lot of money away from pharmaceutical companies. Because the decision would have been that I won, that my church could use cannabis for any form it wished as part of its religious practice. North Carolina didn't let me play in their baseball field. They said take it to the Supreme Court. Gee, does that sound fair? It may be within their rules, but is it moral to deny a religious freedom because of money? Now let me show you how it runs downhill. I was talking to an officer the other day about a situation going on in downtown Asheville. I asked him if the Girl Scouts, which have, at least last weekend, and I think the weekend before, and I hadn't said anything to them this time because they moved to another street the last time I talked to them. I asked them, is it legal for them to sell cookies on the sidewalk in front of Woolworth? See, Woolworth said, oh yeah, you can be in front of our store. But see, Woolworth doesn't have the authority to get permission in front of their store because they don't have authority over that sidewalk. When I asked the officer, he goes, I don't know. Rather than telling the truth, he knew. If I would have been sitting there selling cookies or selling trinkets that I make, I would have been given a ticket. Now, am I against the Girl Scouts selling cookies? No. I'm for the opening of our society. I'm for the fact of charge a minimum fee of $30 a month for me to sit out there and sell my product. Then I can tell you, then I can say to Vash HUD, I no longer need your assistance to pay for my housing. But see, since I legally cannot sit, but they can, the Girl Scouts can because cops walk by, don't say a word. Maybe it's because that troop happens also to be a rich troop.
Thank you so very much for your comments.
I love how you shut me down in 3 minutes.
Thank you so very much, and your time is up. Thank you, and have a good evening. Anyone else who I do not have a printed sheet for? Yes, sir, Mr. Ditmore.
I'm Alan Ditmore. I would have second Chris on that count, that I think there's a lot of selective enforcement addressed at based on perceived status, Girl Scouts compared to homeless or formerly homeless individuals. And there's a lot of selective, knowing what the law is or versus not knowing what the law is, depending on this perceived status. I see a great deal of it. What I really came up here for, though, is that I saw on some calendar, I think an email thing, that you met with a bunch of nonprofits. There's a meeting, maybe it's still in the future.
That's the county. They did it today.
There was a meeting that either happened or going to happen, and there was a bunch of nonprofits invited to pitch for city funds. And Planned Parenthood Health Systems was not on that list.
When?
And as I understand, you're quite a pretty wide discretion as to which nonprofits to fund and why to fund them. And you're funding a bunch of nonprofits, some environmental nonprofits, and these environmental nonprofits have nothing like the environmental impact of Planned Parenthood.
County did theirs today.
That there's no other project that comes anywhere near the environmental benefit per dollar that Planned Parenthood does, or any other contraceptive nonprofit you can find in the area. I think Planned Parenthood is the only one I know of. But if you want return, if you want return on your dollar, on your environmental dollar via nonprofits, that's the way to go. And I was disappointed to see them left off the list. Thanks.
Mr. Ditmore, just to clarify, I don't think we fund any environmental nonprofits through the announcement that was just recently made. And so you may be confused with the county. They did their presentations from nonprofits today. And so they may have had some nonprofits who do environmental work, but there
weren't any nonprofits, environmental nonprofits. Well, if there were human services nonprofits, then of course that's the majority perception of what Planned Parenthood does is human services. Most people.
And please know that the funds that the HCD committee is going to review or talk about partnering with nonprofits are community development block grant funds and home funds, which have federal guidelines and regulations that, as they make recommendations, they have to adhere to. And so, and we can send you some information on that if you need it. But
they become probably too complicated as to whether Planned Parenthood can fit into those, but there are, you have the ability to add local funds.
Okay.
As does the county. Actually, the county title applies Title 10 funds. I don't think they add any local funds to their Title 10 funds.
I got you.
And they should.
Any other members of the community wishing to address council? Council, we do have a closed session, and Mr. Pelley, would you please read it?
Mayor, prior to his reading the closed session motion, would you like to make any announcements before we go into closed session?
Yeah, that's fine. The President of the United States is coming to Asheville tomorrow. We're really excited about that. And all council members have been invited to the event as of right now. And that's going to happen tomorrow at Linamar. And I think that's exciting that he's coming to talk to our community about economic development opportunities and what's available to us, and highlight the strong partnership that exists within the community that we were able to get Linamar in our community. Unfortunately, it is not a ticketed event to the general public, and so it's not open for everyone to attend. And just want to let you all know that it will be streamed through WLOS, and so they've made that available online for free. And also, we will have some residents who will have an opportunity to speak with him directly, and so that's exciting as well. Any other comments? All right, and lastly, because the President of the United States is coming, we have to be mindful that there will be some traffic issues in the city. And please bear in mind that we want to make sure he's safe, and you are safe as well. And so that's why there may be some traffic concerns or some delays. And so please keep that in mind going forward.
Mayor, I move that Asheville City Council go into closed session for the following reason. One, to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment of an individual public officer or employee. Statutory authorization is contained in GS 143-318.11A6, and to prevent the disclosure of information that is confidential pursuant to GS 160A168 Personal Privacy Act. Statutory authorization is contained in GS 143-318.11A1. Second, to prevent disclosure of information as privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. The law that makes the information privileged and confidential is NCGS 143-31810E. Statutory authorization is contained in NCGS 143-31811A1.
Second.
The motion has been properly made and second. And we will dismiss from the closed session. We're in closed session.
Aye.